Chapter 1989. Gu Xingyin naturally noticed this problem as well. It should be said that when she decided to come here, she had already expected such a situation to happen. Zhang Jiujiu had always been good-looking. In addition, Gu Xingyin had been using the spring water to make flower tea and bathe every day. After a few months, although her facial features were still the same, she gave off a feeling that she was much more exquisite than before. Not to mention, her skin was now so fair and delicate that it seemed to be glowing. Sometimes, even Gu Xingyin herself could not help but be absent-minded when she looked at the beauty in the mirror. Everyone looked at this future princess consort Ping and felt that her every frown, every smile, and every movement was extremely elegant and pleasing to the eye. This kind of bearing was completely unlike that of someone who came from a small family in a remote place. Instead, it was as if she had undergone countless rigorous training. Everyone was even more certain that this county princess Xifang's real identity was definitely not simple. In addition, she had such a face that could be called a femme fatale. Many people felt that it was actually King Ping who had taken advantage of her. She was such a living beauty that I couldn't help but feel pity for. We have arrived at the Marquis Mingyi's mansion. Suddenly, there was a loud announcement from outside. This announcement seemed to have awakened the temporary silence in the parlor. In an instant, the place regained its previous liveliness. Only this time, there were more gazes surrounding Gu Xingyin and they were more enthusiastic. Gu Xingyin socialized with the crowd with ease. Her attitude was neither cold nor overly enthusiastic. Her skillful appearance showed that she had a good upbringing. When Chen Mingzhu followed her mother in, she immediately saw Gu Xingyin, who was like the moon surrounded by stars. She did not want to, but Gu Xingyin was really too eye-catching. Sensing her daughter's momentary stiffness, the Marquis of Mingyi turned around and gave her daughter a subtle warning glare. "You'd better calm down today." This was the meaning in her eyes. Chen Mingzhu paused for a moment and a gentle smile appeared on her face. The Marquis of Mingyi was satisfied and slowly walked towards the flower hall. Gu Xingyin watched from afar. Looking at Chen Mingzhu who was walking obediently beside the Marquis of Mingyi, she roughly knew where the Mingyi Marquis' mansion's confidence came from. In terms of looks alone, Chen Mingzhu was indeed the best among the noble ladies present. If Gu Xingyin hadn't come today, Chen Mingzhu might have really been able to outshine everyone else. However, with Gu Xingyin in front of them, when the crowd looked at this charming young miss of Mingyi Marquis Mansion, they felt that she was just that beautiful. Chen Mingzhu naturally sensed everyone's thoughts. She had spent a lot of effort to prepare for today's event so that she could experience the crowd. It would be best if she could surprise the Crown Prince of Princeton today. But now, Chen Mingzhu bit her lip in embarrassment when she saw Gu Xingyin, who seemed to be radiating light even though she was standing on the spot. With County Princess Xifang here, who could see her? She was just a merchant's daughter, so what right did she have to be in the limelight? Looking at Gu Xingyin, who was smiling indifferently, Chen Mingzhu ignored her mother's gaze and blurted out, "County Princess Xifang, you have limitless glory here, but have you ever thought of your brother who has nothing to rely on?" The entire flower hall fell silent because of this sentence. Chapter 1990. Most people's gazes landed on Gu Xingyin. There were also many people who quietly sized up Gu Xingyin and Chen Mingzhu. This Miss Chen of the Mingyi Marquis household did not seem to have good intentions. Could it be that County Princess Xifang and the Mingyi Marquis household had an old grudge? Under everyone's gaze, Gu Xingyin did not move an inch. When she heard Chen Mingzhu's words, her eyelids did not even twitch. She even unhurriedly finished the tea in her cup in one gulp. She put the cup back on the table beside her and then raised her head to look at Chen Mingzhu's face. Everyone looked at the unmoved Gu Xingyin and then looked at Chen Mingzhu, who spoke harshly and had a balance in their hearts. The winner was immediately decided. The Marquis of Mingyi felt that something was wrong the moment her daughter opened her mouth. However, even if she wanted to stop her, she could not stop her impulsive daughter. At this moment, she was extremely angry in her heart. If she had known that Chen Mingzhu would be so impatient, she would not have brought her here even if she had to report her illness. Gu Xingyin's lips curled into a cold smile as she looked at Chen Mingzhu. This county princess actually did not know that I had an older brother. Looking at her indifferent appearance, Chen Mingzhu's heart thumped. She thought to herself, could it be that she had been deceived by that person called Zhang Fei? It turned out that ever since Gu Xingyin suffered a setback, Chen Mingzhu had been thinking of a way to slander Gu Xingyin without implicating herself. However, Gu Xingyin had always lived in seclusion and had not done anything that would cause others to criticize her. Chen Mingzhu simply could not find an opportunity. She let the people of the Mingyi Marquis household secretly keep an eye on the county princess manor. That time when Shi Yunfei was thrown out, the people of the Mingyi Marquis household happened to see it. Remembering their eldest Mrs. orders, the people of the Mingyi Marquis household brought Shi Yunfei back to the manor. When Zhang Fei saw the people from the Mingyi Marquis mansion, he was scared out of his wits. When had he ever seen the aristocratic families in the capital with such rules? When he heard Chen Mingzhu ask about the Zhang family, Shi Yunfei naturally didn't dare to say that he had abandoned the Zhang family because he was greedy for riches and honor. Now, he wanted to get close to the Zhang family again but was rejected. Moreover, because Chen Mingzhu didn't hide it at all, Shi Yunfei clearly saw her malice towards the Zhang family. He was a person who knew what to say. Seeing Chen Mingzhu like this, how could he not know what to do? Therefore, in Shi Yunfei's narration, he became an adopted son who was abandoned by the Zhang family after they became rich, and the Zhang family became a typical family that adopted an adopted son when they were down and out. After they became successful, they looked down on an outsider like him. Logically speaking, the worst thing to do in such a situation was to listen to only one side of the story. Chen Mingzhu also shouldn't be such an impulsive person. She was prepared to instruct people to investigate the background of this person who called himself Zhang Fei and then make plans based on the results. However, when she saw Gu Xingyin in King An's imperial residence today, she couldn't help but feel that she couldn't vent her anger. In a moment of impulse, she blurted out this matter that she wasn't sure about. After she finished speaking and saw Gu Xingyin's reaction, Chen Mingzhu was already regretting it. She also heard Gu Xingyin's words. Her words actually didn't acknowledge this elder brother at all. Impossible. Chen Mingzhu didn't believe at all that Zhang Fei really had nothing to do with the Zhang family. Chapter 1991. After all, everything that Zhang Fei had said about the Zhang family did not seem to be a lie. Thinking of this, Chen Mingzhu calmed down. She sneered at Gu Xingyin and asked sharply, "Oh. County Princess Sifang is a busy person. Could it be that you want me to remind you that you have called young Master Zhang Fei as your brother for more than 10 years? Have you forgotten him so quickly?" Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and revealed a surprised expression. She did not expect Chen Mingzhu to know about Zhang Fei. Seeing her reaction, Chen Mingzhu became more and more certain. She changed the topic and said, or could it be that County Princess Sifang did not forget, but deliberately forgot? The entire parlor fell into a strange silence because of the conversation between the two. Many people were sizing up the two of them as they listened to the gossip. The Marquis of Mingyi's hands almost tore the handkerchief in her sleeves. She did not understand why her daughter wanted to go against County Princess Sifang. She was conferred the title of equal princess consort by the emperor himself. So what if what she said today was the truth? What could County Princess Sifang do about this? After a month, she would still be married off in a grand manner and become the noble equal princess consort. As for the Mingyi Marquis who was going against her, the Marquis of Mingyi did not want to think about this possibility. Under Chen Mingzhu's complacent gaze, she suddenly took a step forward and came to her daughter's side. Bowing slightly to Gu Xingyin, the Marquis of Mingyi said apologetically, "Mingzhu has been having nightmares recently and her words are often incoherent. Please do not take it seriously, County Princess Sifang. What she meant was that she wanted this matter to never happen. The women at the side all looked at Gu Xingyin, wanting to hear her reaction. Mother. Chen Mingzhu looked at the Marquis of Mingyi in disbelief. She did not understand why her mother would side with her opponent when she had the advantage. The Marquis of Mingyi glared at her fiercely and signaled her to shut up, stay here obediently. I will settle this with you when we return. Gu Xingyin looked at the Marquis of Mingyi in astonishment. What a coincidence. If Gu Xingyin was really like what Chen Mingzhu said and did something bad to Zhang Fei, then her words would give Gu Xingyin a way out. In this way, not only could he make up for what Chen Mingzhu had said earlier, he might even gain her favor. Gu Xingyin sighed at the wonders of heredity. The Marquis of Mingyi was such an intelligent woman, how did she give birth to such a brainless Chen Mingzhu? If she was in a good mood, she might not want to argue with Chen Mingzhu. However, Chen Mingzhu had messed with her mood at the moment. Most importantly, if she let it go so easily, others might really think that the Zhang family had done something unkind. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Gu Xingyin laughed softly. The Marquis of Mingyi should be well. Invite a famous doctor to take a closer look at Miss Chen. Our Zhang family did have a young master who had been raised from a young age. However, he had found his real relatives half a year ago and changed his name to enter the genealogy of his biological father's family. She fixed her gaze on Chen Mingzhu and said ambiguously, I don't understand. As the eldest son of the Shi family in Yunzhou, how could young Master Shi be as poor as Miss Chen said? Also. She gently covered half of her mouth with her handkerchief and smiled. This county princess is a little curious. Why is Miss Chen so concerned about young Master Shi's matter? Chapter 1992. When she said this, the Marquis of Mingyi's face turned ugly. In the hall, the laughter of others could be heard. A madam who was not on good terms with the Mingyi Marquis laughed, County Princess, you're at the right time. You should be able to guess the thoughts of this young man and woman. Gu Xingyin was stunned and then blushed. She pursed her lips and smiled, so it's like this? No wonder Miss Chen is so concerned about young Master Shi. The Marquis of Mingyi said with a gloomy face, please be careful with your words. Our Mingzhu has never stepped out of the house. How would she know other men? She had already sensed the malice of these people. If Chen Mingzhu's heart belonged to someone else and her reputation of having feelings for other men was spread, which young master would dare to marry her in the future? She had to think of a way to get rid of this matter. Gu Xingyin said lightly, Madam, you're wrong. If Miss Chen doesn't care about young Master Shi, how would she know the name he used in the past? It was Chen Mingzhu's fault for not being likable. At this time, other than the Marquis of Mingyi, no one spoke up for her. Amidst the teasing of the crowd, the Marquis of Mingyi brought Chen Mingzhu with a cold face. After delivering the birthday gift, they hurriedly left. As for the Crown Prince of Qing'an, she no longer cared about him. Slap. When they returned to the carriage, the Marquis of Mingyi tried to hold it in. In the end, she could not hold it in. For the first time, she could not maintain her poise and gave Chen Mingzhu a slap. Mother. Chen Mingzhu looked at the Marquis of Mingyi with grievance and resentment. You stupid thing. What have I taught you? Why do you still want to go against County Princess Sifang? However, with her brain, she could never gain the upper hand when going against others. Chen Mingzhu covered her face and screamed, I know that you never liked me. You hate that you didn't give birth to a son. You don't like me at all. If you don't like me, just say it. Don't worry about me. Why do you have to humiliate me? When the Marquis of Mingyi heard such rebellious words, she was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. She wished she could faint. This evil creature. You. Get out of here. Chen Mingzhu didn't say anything else and directly ordered them to stop the carriage. She actually jumped off the carriage and ran out. The Marquis of Mingyi really fainted this time. When Gu Xingyin returned to the county princess's residence, she was informed that King Ping had arrived. She walked in. "How long have you been here? Why didn't you send someone to inform me?" Qi Qingxian smiled and said, "Anyway, the environment in your mansion is very beautiful. I'll like it if I stay a little longer." He suddenly asked, "Does that Chen Mingzhu have a grudge against you?" Obviously, he also knew about what happened in King N's mansion today. Gu Xingyin thought about it and said, "She probably thinks that we didn't give her face. This Miss Chen doesn't like me and always wants to frame me." Speaking of enmity, there was really no enmity between the two of them. Qi Qingshuan's expression turned cold. He had probably specially investigated Chen Mingzhu, and he hated this woman very much. "I will get someone to teach her a lesson. I went to a relative's house today and only came back at 9 o'clock to start writing. I estimate that with my speed, I can only update 6 chapters at most. How much more? I'll make up for it tomorrow. There will be another update before 12 o'clock. Also, why didn't anyone vote for Gao Lingji today? Double monthly votes at the beginning of the month. 1 vote is worth 2 votes. Everyone, please vote for her with your guaranteed monthly votes." Chapter 1993. Gu Xingyin did not ask what kind of lesson Qi Qingxian was going to teach Chen Mingzhu. Because Qi Qingxian used this incident to tell Gu Xingyin, "Jojo, I don't want to be a harmless person in front of you forever." He looked at her seriously, "That's not the real me. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So, you have to accept all the different versions of me." Gu Xingyin blinked and pretended to be afraid. "Aren't you afraid that I'll be afraid of you and not want to marry you?" Qi Qingxian laughed and gave her a big hug in response. "I'm not afraid. You're destined to be mine. You can't run away even if you want to." He looked at Gu Xingyin. What he did not say was, "Even if you're really afraid of me, I'll keep you by my side even if I have to break your legs and break your wings." He hugged the person in his arms tightly and took in a deep breath of her fragrant scent. In the next month or so, Gu Xingyin began to prepare for marriage wholeheartedly. Prince Ping's mansion was well prepared. She did not even need to think about anything. She only needed to wait for the day of her marriage with peace of mind. Just one day before Gu Xingyin and Qi Qingshuan's wedding, a scandal broke out in the capital. The dignified eldest miss of the Mingyi Marquis mansion was actually drunk in her own courtyard. What was even more surprising was that she was actually hugging a strange man and sleeping on the same bed with her clothes disheveled. She could not clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. Moreover, whether the eldest daughter of Mingyi Marquis was innocent or not was still unknown. The entire capital was abuzz with the news. In the past, the commoners were most interested in the affairs of the rich and powerful. Mingyi Marquis Mansion had tried to think of ways to suppress the news. However, it seemed that someone was secretly opposing them. The news became more and more intense. In the end, there were even people who vividly described the embroidered bellyband Chen Mingzhu wore that day. At this time, no one cared why someone happened to enter Mingyi Marquis Mansion's side courtyard and happened to see Chen Mingzhu. Coincidentally or not, this rumor spread. Everyone became the promoters of the rumors. It was said that Madame Yi Ho was so angry that she fell ill. In the mansion of Mingyi Marquis. "I'm not marrying," Chen Mingzhu shouted. In front of her stood a middle-aged man in a dark blue brocade robe. He was quite handsome, but his face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that his body had been hollowed out by wine and women. This person was Chen Mingzhu's father, this generation's Mingyi Marquis. He looked coldly at his daughter, who had always been a troublemaker, and said, "It's not up to you not to marry. If you don't want to marry, that's fine too. You can wear a piece of white silk or become a nun. My Mingyi Marquis mansion will treat it as if we don't have a daughter like you." He flicked his sleeves and left, no longer caring about Chen Mingzhu who was limp on the ground. The next day, the entire capital witnessed the grand scene of King Ping marrying County Princess Si Fang. According to the commoners who witnessed it that day, County Princess Si Fang's dowry had already entered King Ping's mansion. The last one had yet to leave the County Princess mansion. Even if a princess from the palace got married, this would be the same, right? Red candles were lit on the wedding bed, and the Luan and Phoenix were singing together. The return of the three dynasties. When Qi Qingxian accompanied Gu Shengyin back to the County Princess mansion, Mingyi Marquis mansion quietly married off their honorable eldest daughter in a four-sedan chair. Chapter 1994. Zhang Zhenxing glanced at his daughter from time to time. Qi Qingxian understood and bluntly said that he wanted to see the flowers in Gu Shengyin's courtyard. He found an excuse and walked out, leaving the father and daughter alone. Jojo, Zhang Zhenxing wanted to ask a lot of questions. However, his father was not as good as his mother. There were some things that were not convenient for him to ask. Gu Shengyin already understood all his unfinished words. She smiled and her bright face was filled with happiness and joy. Father, I'm fine. He treats me very well. Prince Ping's mansion is also very good. Zhang Zhenxing was finally relieved. His daughter's complexion could not lie, nor could her smile. She was doing very well. Zhang Zhenxing only felt that the stone that had been pressing on his heart for the past 3 days and 3 nights had finally been removed. It was fine as long as she was doing well. This way, he could rest assured. Even if he was old in the future and could no longer take care of her, there would be another person to replace him as her father to hold up the sky for her and protect her from the wind and rain. This was good. Qi Qingxian estimated that it was almost time. When he returned, he saw the father and daughter sitting next to each other and seemed to be chatting happily. Seeing him coming, his father-in-law seemed to be in a good mood. He even warmly asked him to drink tea together. Qi Qingxian was a little confused, but he was still very happy. The couple stayed until dinner was over before returning to the mansion. In the carriage, Qi Qingxian asked curiously, "What did you say to my father-in-law?" He did not know if it was his illusion, but he felt that his father-in-law's attitude towards him this time was more affectionate than before. Gu Shengyin allowed him to massage her sore shoulders with moderate strength. She smiled when she heard that. She turned her head and stared at this handsome man seriously. "My father and I. You treat me very well. I'm doing very well in Prince Ping's mansion." Qi Qingshuan's hands suddenly paused. He raised his head and his eyes met Gu Shengyin's. In the next moment, the hand that was still on her arm moved and Gu Shengyin was pulled into his arms. Qi Qingxian hugged her tightly and sighed contentedly. "Why is my wife so lovable?" Gu Shengyin moved a little and found a comfortable position in his arms. He said lazily, "Of course, it's your blessing to be able to marry me." Qi Qingxian nodded seriously. "I also think that meeting Jojo is the greatest blessing in my life." The last words disappeared to Gu Shengyin's ears. To Qi. And to Gu to be to hear to say. Gu Shengyin. She glared at him fiercely and said nothing. The carriage rocked and swayed. They had just finished dinner. Gu Shengyin soon felt drowsy. "Jojo." A low voice seemed to ring in her ears. She replied in a daze. Qi Qingxian looked at her drowsy face and felt sorry for her in his heart. He leaned forward and kissed her on the cheek. He whispered, "I love you." She seemed to have fallen asleep. She did not answer him. However, the corners of her lips moved slightly, revealing an extremely shallow smile. Chapter 1995. A man and a woman's teasing laughter came from the room. Chen Mingzhu stood outside the room. She did not need to look to know what kind of unsightly scene was happening inside the room. She was so angry that her chest was trembling. In the end, she could not hold it in and kicked the door open. In the room, a gorgeous woman in pink clothes got up from the man's body with a panicked expression. "Madam." The woman was obviously uneasy. The man, on the other hand, had an honest look. His gaze swept across Chen Mingzhu's body coldly. Upon closer inspection, a trace of disgust could be seen in his eyes. "What are you doing here again?" he asked impatiently. Chen Mingzhu was so angry that she was trembling. "What am I doing here? Shi Yunfei, it's broad daylight now. Look at yourself, what kind of person are you?" She despised Shi Yunfei for not making progress. These words touched Shi Yunfei's biggest sore spot. In the beginning, he did not want to be like this. He was conceited that he was knowledgeable and thought that he had a bright future after hugging the golden thigh of the Marquis's mansion. However, reality soon told him that he was thinking too much. Although the mini Marquis's mansion sounded impressive, it was actually just an empty shell. Not to mention, his wife was nominally the miss of the Marquis's mansion. However, every New Year's Day, when he followed Chen Mingzhu to the Marquis's mansion, the Marquis and his wife were indifferent. Shi Yunfei saw that even Chen Mingzhu's concubine sisters and brothers-in-law were more important than him in front of the Marquis. After a while, his impression of Chen Mingzhu naturally reached the lowest point. And he had offended King Ping before. Wanting to participate in the imperial examination, there was no chance for him to rise. At home, Chen Mingzhu had a stubborn temper. She looked down on Shi Yunfei and did not know how to smile and flatter him. The couple did not look like husband and wife. Instead, they lived like enemies. Since this mansion was supported by Chen Mingzhu's dowry, Shi Yunfei could not divorce her. Later on, he simply took in 2 beautiful concubines and did not step into the main house at all. What the eye does not see, the heart does not grieve over. Chen Mingzhu felt extremely aggrieved. However, her family did not care about her at all. She could not divorce Shi Yunfei either. Her reputation had long been tarnished. She could forget about getting married again. Yet, she could only endure it. Shi Yunfei sneered, "Then what do you think I should do? Both you and I have offended the equal consort. Do you think I still have a chance to get up?" His words once again touched Chen Mingzhu's sore spot. Some time ago, it was said that Consort Ping had given birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. King Ping was overjoyed and personally set up a tent to pray for the blessings of his newborn children. The current Princess Consort Ping had undoubtedly become the object of envy of all the women in the capital. She had a noble status, a husband who wholeheartedly refused to take in concubines, and now, she even had a son and a daughter. This was especially true for Chen Mingzhu, who had always been jealous of her. Every time she heard about Ping Wanfei, she felt as if someone was stabbing her heart with a needle. She sneered and said, "Isn't it all because of you, you trash? If you weren't blind back then, you wouldn't have wanted to kick away the Zhang family and climb up the Shi family's branch. Would you have fallen to this point now?" Shi Yunfei snapped, "Shut up." Chen Mingzhu did not back down. "You're stupid, yet you don't want others to talk about it." Gu Xingyin was lying lazily outside the study room, basking in the sun. Suddenly, she heard a system notification saying that Chen Mingzhu and Shi Yunfei were fighting again. Her gaze froze. The next moment, she received a system notification, "Mission completed." "System, don't tell me about her anymore in the future." "Okay, host. It's over, it's over. A new world will open tomorrow. A story about an ex-girlfriend. Come, repeat after me. Double the monthly votes. Double the monthly votes. Double the monthly votes. 10,000 chapters tomorrow. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1996. When Gu Xingyin came to this world, she found herself sitting in a coffee shop. The elegant sound of a piano rang in her ears. Around her were well-dressed working men and women. It was very quiet and the atmosphere was very harmonious. However, the woman sitting opposite her didn't seem to be in harmony with her. The woman sitting opposite Gu Xingyin was wearing a light-colored designer dress. Her nails were carefully trimmed and painted. Her makeup was also quite exquisite. Her looks were also very good. She was the kind of woman that was very common in this international metropolis. She stared straight at Gu Xingyin. Her gaze was half provocative, 30% proud, and 20% jealous. Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change. Her beautiful white porcelain hand quietly stirred the coffee in front of her. System, transmit the plot. Okay, host. A large number of memory fragments flashed through Gu Xingyin's mind. She gently closed her eyes and digested the plot of this world. The original Xie Han was the only daughter of a famous entrepreneur in Yunhai City. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Since she was young, she wore the best designer clothes, ate the most exquisite food, went to the best school, and even made friends in a circle that ordinary people couldn't step into. The only unexpected thing was that she had a boyfriend who had a huge shortcoming. Jie Ming and Xie Han met in university. Jie Ming was a senior who was 1 year older than Xie Han. At that time, when Xie Han drove to the school alone to register, Jie Ming happened to be a volunteer to welcome the new students. She didn't know if it was because the sun was too strong that day, but it caused problems in Xie Han's brain. When Jie Ming introduced himself to her with a smile and took her to the freshman registration area of the department, she actually felt that this boy was very handsome at that moment and had a good impression of him. Of course, Jie Ming wasn't indifferent to this beautiful junior sister. Young men and women were always straightforward when it came to relationships. Moreover, Xie Han had never been a roundabout person. The two of them confirmed their relationship in less than a month after school started. In the beginning, it was indeed sweet. Xie Han and Jie Ming even had a feeling that they would never like another person so much in this lifetime. They wanted to be with him or her for the rest of their lives. However, after the initial impulse and passion passed, the conflict between the two began to appear. Jie Ming's family was just an ordinary working-class family. He had lived the life of an ordinary person since he was young. Therefore, he couldn't understand his girlfriend's spending habits. She would spend tens of thousands on a coat, and a set of cosmetics would cost several months of her living expenses. In fact, Xie Han knew about his family conditions. When she was with him, she would try to find places with prices that were more affordable. However, she usually used her own money for her own expenses. She had never let Jie Ming buy her luxury goods. Even so, Jie Ming still couldn't understand. He communicated with his girlfriend several times, thinking that he was correcting his girlfriend's incorrect consumption concept. Xie Han had been spoiled by her family since she was a child. Her family's conditions had always allowed her to live such a life. In her mind, since she had the conditions to live a good life, why should she suffer? She had never looked down on ordinary people. She usually got along well with her classmates in school. However, this didn't mean that she was willing to suffer and lower her standard of living for the sake of her family's conditions. Chapter 1997. The two of them started arguing. Speaking of which, Jie Ming was Xie Han's first love, and she really liked this boyfriend. In the beginning, Xie Han didn't want to break up, and the two of them spent a year arguing. But maybe Xie Han's attitude gave Jie Ming an illusion. He felt that he could change Xie Han's mind, and his behavior became more and more excessive. When Xie Han was shopping at the counter, he would say in front of the salesperson that it wasn't worth spending a few thousand to buy this, and that it was no different to buy clothes that cost a few hundred at the mall. He also said that these big brands were only worth a lot of money, and that the cost was not much at all, and so on and so forth. Every time, Xie Han felt that the salesperson looked at her as if they were laughing at her. She also tried to reason with Jia Ming countless times, saying that this was her life philosophy, and that her family and friends also lived such a life. But it was useless. Neither of them could convince the other. In the end, in the third year of university, Xie Han, who had been worn out and had no temper and energy, finally broke up with Jia Ming. At that time, she still had him in her heart. However, that passionate love had long been worn down by the arguments and debates of the past 2 years. She seriously and carefully thought about the future of the two of them, and the final conclusion was that with such a huge difference in views, there was no future at all. Jia Ming was a little confused by this sudden breakup. But he was a young man after all, and he was impulsive. When his girlfriend broke up, he did not try to persuade her to stay. It was not until after the breakup that Jia Ming realized that he still liked his ex-girlfriend. He tried to get back together with Xie Han, but Xie Han firmly rejected him. After that, Jia Ming graduated, and it was said that after graduation, he went to a very good company and was considered a popular figure among the freshmen. When Xie Han graduated, it was said that Jia Ming had a unique vision. After jumping ship, he pulled a few university alumni together to start a company. Now, it was thriving and could be considered a successful alumni model. But this had nothing to do with Xie Han. Jia Ming also contacted Xie Han a few times later, vaguely revealing his intention to get back together. However, they were all firmly rejected by Xie Han. After she graduated, she went to her family's company. She was the only daughter in the Xie family, and the entire Xie family would be handed over to her in the future. Xie Han's burden was not light. Every day became very busy, and there was never enough time. Fortunately, Xie Han had already started to get involved with the company's affairs during her senior year. After a few months of being in a hurry, she finally began to get used to this busy and fulfilling situation. Then, a strange woman came into her life. It was the woman in front of him, Zhang Henin, who claimed to be Jia Ming's girlfriend. In the original plot, Zhang Henin used various channels to find Xie Han. Then, she hinted that she and Jia Ming had a good relationship. Jia Ming bought her this and that big brands, accompanied her to travel here and there, and so on. Xie Han thought that this woman was crazy and ignored her. But this woman always persevered to find her, showing her existence in front of her and being hostile to her. It was a long time later that Xie Han found out why this woman did this. Jia Ming couldn't forget his old feelings for her. Chapter 1998. At this time, Xie Han was no longer the girl in university who still had all kinds of illusions. She was very clear that her future partner was most likely to find a man who was of equal social status to her, who would be helpful to both of their careers. This was commonly known as a business marriage. Even if she didn't want a business marriage and wanted to pursue free love, at least she had to find someone who had the same 3 views and living habits as her. In this way, it wouldn't be too tiring for them to get along. Right now, she didn't have the energy to change or accommodate anyone. She also didn't have any extra thoughts about Jia Ming. For this woman named Zhang Henin, Xie Han explained very seriously the first time that she had nothing to do with Jia Ming and hoped that she wouldn't harass her. But it was useless. That Zhang Henin was like a fanatic. Every few days, she would show off in front of Xie Han and show how good Jia Ming was to her. Until later, the annoyed Xie Han didn't care about her at all. She had no common language with such a brainless and rational woman. What's more, she didn't want to have anything to do with her ex-boyfriend. Originally, it was fine to deal with it like this. After all, Xie Han's daily schedule was very tight. Even if Zhang Henin wanted to block her, under normal circumstances, she couldn't see her. At this time, Jia Ming, who hadn't seen Xie Han for a long time, appeared again. He seemed to know what his current girlfriend had done. He felt very guilty and asked Xie Han out to apologize. Xie Han didn't want to have anything to do with Jia Ming, but she really didn't know what to do with his brainless girlfriend. After thinking about it, she decided to meet him, hoping to have a chat with Jia Ming and let him have a good communication with his girlfriend. She didn't expect that this meeting would ruin things. Jia Ming didn't come for Zhang Henin's matter at all. It was just an excuse he found. During the meeting, Jia Ming kept talking about how he couldn't forget Xie Han all these years and how unreasonable his current girlfriend was. In fact, Henin, I'm with Wang Henin just because she has the same name as you. Jia Ming said affectionately. Xie Han's response was to splash the drink in her hand on his face, scum. In Xie Han's eyes, Zhang Henin was abominable. However, Jia Ming was a scumbag who kept looking at the pot while eating from the bowl. She decided not to hate Zhang Henin so much. This girl was also a pitiful person. But in fact, she thought others were pitiful, but others thought she was hateful. Zhang Henin knew that Xie Ming came to see Xie Han alone. She had always known that there was an untouchable cinnabar mole in her boyfriend's heart, a white moonlight that he would never forget. On one hand, she felt inferior, and on the other hand, she hated Xie Han. She felt that since they had already broken up, why would Xie Han still want to meet Jia Ming? Did she want to get back together with him now that he was rich? Such thoughts fermented to the peak as Jia Ming's attitude towards him became colder and colder. In the end, Zhang Henin fell into a demonic state. She secretly hired a private investigator to check on Xie Han's schedule and followed her when she went to an island for a vacation. Chapter 1999. Zhang Henin hadn't thought about what she was going to do. But when she saw Xie Han sitting alone on the reef, she had a sudden impulse. She pushed her into the water. Xie Han knew how to swim, but the bad thing was that she came to this private island alone for a vacation and drank a lot because it was rare for her to relax. One could imagine the consequences of a drunk person falling into the sea. Xie Han was dead. She didn't even let anyone follow her because she wanted to enjoy the peace and quiet. The body was found after a few days when her assistant, who couldn't get in touch with her, noticed something was wrong and called the police. The unplanned murder left behind countless clues. Soon, the police found Zhang Henin's identity. She was arrested. From the arrest to the sentencing to the execution. Jia Ming didn't even come to see her for a few months. Gu Xingyin read the whole story silently. She couldn't help looking up at the woman who was pretending to be calm. She thought to herself, I wonder if Zhang Henin regretted it when she was executed in the original story. She checked the time. Today was the first time Zhang Henin came to see her. It was rare for her to get off work in the morning. She ordered a cup of coffee in a cafe near the company and sat down to rest for a while. Zhang Henin sat across from her uninvited. Xie Han was a woman with good self-restraint, so she didn't ask Zhang Henin to leave. Instead, she chose to let her talk when Zhang Henin said, I'm Jia Ming's girlfriend and I want to talk to you. Zhang Henin was a little nervous at this time. She had been with Jia Ming for a year. From the beginning, she felt that her boyfriend wasn't warm to her. She had observed carefully and found that Jia Ming did not look for any random woman outside. At first, she thought that Jia Ming was cold and didn't care about others. Not long ago, she found out that Jia Ming had a rich and beautiful girlfriend who he dated for more than 2 years by chance. She slowly asked around and found out that Jia Ming and his ex-girlfriend were very close. They were famous in the school at that time. Even now, many people didn't understand why they broke up. She found out about Xie Han's existence. After that, he asked about Xie Han and began to wait outside the Xie family's residence. Until today, when she finally saw Xie Han alone, she mustered up the courage to sit in front of her. Zhang Henin looked at Xie Han, who was sitting opposite her. Xie Han was wearing a professional suit that was too formal for her age. Her hair was neat and short, and she had delicate light makeup on her face. There was nothing out of the ordinary about her. This kind of dressing should have made him look old, but with the contrast of the other party's exquisite and cold face, it made him look neat and handsome. In the end, according to the current popular saying, looks were everything. Xie Han was a woman who could easily make people of the same sex feel nervous. Whether it was her family background or her beauty, they were both strong enough to be aggressive. Zhang Henin was sure that in this quiet cafe, although it wasn't obvious, at least half of the men's gazes were quietly on Xie Han. She clenched the coffee cup with both hands and looked into the other person's eyes. She couldn't help but repeat, "My name is Zhang Henin. I'm Jie Ming's current girlfriend." Chapter 2000. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and looked at her with a faint smile. She didn't say a word, but Zhang Henin felt a kind of pressure from her, which made her a little breathless. This woman is a strong opponent. She labeled Gu Xingyin in her heart. She didn't know that if Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking at this moment, she would definitely laugh out loud. What is a strong opponent? Only people who have the same goal and are equally capable can be called a strong opponent. What does Zhang Henin have that Xie Han would fight for? Or, if Xie Han really likes something, what ability does Zhang Henin have to fight for it? A strong opponent? Didn't they say that Gu Xingyin is arrogant? Does Zhang Henin deserve it? Perhaps in Zhang Henin's eyes, she had already labeled Gu Xingyin as a proud and arrogant young lady. Therefore, when she saw Gu Xingyin's reaction, her first thought was that she looked down on her. This thought made her hold the edge of the cup tighter. Don't be afraid, Zhang Henin. She told herself, you are Jie Ming's real girlfriend now. This woman and Jie Ming are over. She is nothing. You have nothing to be afraid of. She took a deep breath, looked at Gu Xingyin, and said calmly, I have a good relationship with Jie Ming. We have been together for more than a year. Gu Xingyin didn't comment. Her expression was indifferent, and Zhang Henin couldn't guess what she was thinking. She had no choice but to continue. Jie Ming is a very considerate boyfriend. When we are resting, he will drive me out to play. He also took me to see his parents and bought me a lot of things. Zhang Henin said and casually reached out her hand to touch her long hair. The bracelet on her hand was shining under the light of the cafe. Gu Xingyin recognized it at a glance. It was a bracelet from a first-tier luxury brand in America last year. Xie Han had also bought a bracelet of this design last year, but this year, there was a new product that she liked more, so the bracelet was rarely taken out. She was a little surprised. Jie Ming was so stingy when he was in university. Not only was he reluctant to spend money, but he also stopped Xie Han from spending money. Why did he suddenly change now? Zhang Henin had been paying attention to Gu Xingyin's expression. Naturally, she did not miss a trace of surprise. She was very pleased with herself. Previously, when she had inquired about the past between Xie Han and Jie Ming, she had heard that the reason for their breakup seemed to be due to their different views. Among them, there were rumors that Jie Ming never bought gifts for his girlfriend and accused Xie Han of being extravagant. The two even quarreled many times because of this. Jie Ming was not willing to buy luxury items for Xie Han, but he had bought himself all kinds of branded gifts. What did this mean? There was a hint of pride in Zhang Henin's tone. I told him many times not to spend money, but he didn't listen. He always wanted to buy it for me. He said that he was Jie Ming's girlfriend, so he couldn't be worse than others. As she spoke, she paid attention to Gu Xingyin's expression, hoping to see the other party's expression change. However, she was disappointed. Except for the most happy surprise, Gu Xingyin regained her calm expression. Zhang Henin couldn't tell whether she was happy or angry at all. Gu Xingyin picked up the cup of coffee in his hand and took a sip. Then, he frowned slightly. It didn't taste good. Chapter 2001. She put down the cup in her hand and looked at Zhang Henin, who had finally stopped. She suddenly asked, "Miss Zhang, are you thirsty?" Zhang Henin was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what she meant and replied subconsciously, "No, I'm not thirsty." Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "Oh, I thought you would be thirsty after talking so much." Zhang Henin's expression changed when she heard this. Was she insinuating that she was long-winded? She secretly gritted her teeth and thought to herself that this woman was indeed difficult to deal with. She waited for Gu Xingyin to continue talking so that she could deal with it as she saw fit. But unfortunately, Gu Xingyin didn't intend to cooperate with her. After saying that sentence, she fell into silence again. The atmosphere between the two of them had been in a mysterious awkwardness since the beginning. Seeing that time was passing little by little, Zhang Henin looked at the time. She had to go back in a while. She still had to make dinner for Jie Ming. Seeing that Gu Xingyin didn't have the slightest intention of speaking, she gritted her teeth and continued, "Jie Ming and I might get engaged at the end of the year." After saying that, she seemed to have thought of something and stopped talking. She said a little embarrassedly, "Look at me." Jie Ming said not to tell anyone first. "I'm almost unable to hide it," Gu Xingyin suddenly sneered. This was probably the most intense action that Zhang Henin had seen her express her emotions since meeting her today. Then she saw that the other party was looking straight at her. Zhang Henin couldn't help but let go of the hand that had been holding the coffee cup, waiting for Gu Xingyin to say something. However, Gu Xingyin spoke. Her eyes were slender and long. When she looked at people seriously, there was always a sense of oppression unconsciously. At this time, Zhang Henin clearly felt this kind of oppression. "I say, Miss Zhang, what's the point of announcing the matter between you and your boyfriend to a stranger like me? If you really want to spread it around, you can find a few media outlets and spend a lot of money. There are plenty of people who will help you publicize it." Her tone was neither hurried nor slow, and her voice was clear and gentle. When she spoke, it was as if she was reading prose. "Or rather, Miss Zhang, did you deliberately say this for me, your ex-girlfriend?" Zhang Henin couldn't tell if she was happy or angry from her words. At this moment, Zhang Henin couldn't figure out what she was trying to express. However, there was no need for her to find out, because Gu Xingyin had already said it herself. She said, "But I don't think Miss Zhang needs to do that. I did have a relationship with Jie Ming, but that was a long time ago. I was the one who initiated the breakup. Miss Zhang, you can rest assured that I, Xie Han, do not have the habit of going back to the same old grass. Besides, there's no shortage of men rushing to get involved in other people's relationships. Miss Zhang, you don't have to spend so much effort on me." This was a more euphemistic way of putting it. The translation was, "Don't worry, I'm still thinking about your man. I didn't like him back then, and I don't like him even more now. Don't bother me." Zhang Henin choked for a moment. She didn't expect that the other party wouldn't even be willing to be tactful and directly expose her purpose. This made her very embarrassed. She forced a smile and said, "Miss Xie, you're overthinking. I just heard that you and Jie Ming have a good relationship. I just want to get to know you." Gu Xingyin reached out a hand to stop her. "There's no need to get to know him. I didn't break up peacefully with him back then, and we haven't been in contact all these years. If you two get married, I won't go. I wish you two a happy marriage in advance." Chapter 2002. With that said, she didn't care about Zhang Henin's ugly expression. She lowered her head to look at the time on her watch and raised her voice to pay the bill. Zhang Henin hurriedly said, I'll do it. Today's coffee is on me, Miss Xie." Gu Xingyin revealed a strange smile when she heard this. She didn't fight with Zhang Henin and just sat there and watched Zhang Henin pay. After Zhang Henin paid, she saw that Gu Xingyin hadn't left. She felt that she had nothing else to talk to her about, so she got up and said goodbye. Gu Xingyin nodded indifferently and didn't even move his body. Seeing that Zhang Hanin had left, Gu Xingyin didn't have any interest in drinking coffee. She picked up her bag and got ready to leave. Her movements suddenly paused. Then she put her bag down again and turned her head to look at a man who was walking towards her. She stared at him without blinking. Her gaze revealed a look of interest. The man who was walking towards her was tall. She estimated that he was over 185 meters tall. His tall figure and handsome facial features attracted a lot of attention. In addition, the man was wearing a custom-made suit that was obviously expensive. Gu Xingyin was sure that as long as the man was willing, at least half of the ladies in the cafe would be willing to have dinner with him. The man's goal was very clear. He didn't hesitate at all as he walked over to her table. Then he sat down in the seat that Zhang Hanin had just sat down in front of her. Perhaps it was because Gu Xingyin's gaze was too direct that he wasn't used to it. He said, "Miss Xie, do you know me?" Gu Xingyin smiled and reached out her hand. "Mr. Tsin, you must be joking. Is there anyone in Yunhai City who doesn't know Mr. Tsin?" He was the eldest grandson of the Tsin family, the future head of the Tsin family, and the recognized number one person in the younger generation. His name was Tsin Yuye. Tsin Yuye reached out his hand to shake hers. Her hand was warm and cool to the touch. Tsin Yuye only felt that her hand was extremely soft, as though it didn't have any bones. The delicate touch made him want to caress it. Of course, if he couldn't even endure this, then his title as the number one genius of the younger generation in the Cloud Sea would be in vain. In fact, the two of them had only held each other's hands for a split second. Tsin Yuye retracted his hand and looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin was a little confused. After all, in Xie Han's memory, she didn't have any relationship with this Mr. Tsin Yuye. So, why did he come looking for him? With this thought in mind, she naturally asked the question. Tsin Yuye's eyes flashed when he heard her doubts. His gaze swept across the exquisite face opposite him, and his voice unconsciously became gentler. "I heard that the Xie family is looking for a marriage alliance." Gu Xingyin frowned. Indeed, Father Xie had revealed this plan, but he had also told his daughter that everything would be up to her. Speaking of which, with the Xie family's current family business, a business marriage was just icing on the cake. If Xie Han was really unwilling, the Xie family had no plans to find a marriage of equal family background. But, why did Tsin Yuye ask this? Gu Xingyin didn't admit or deny it. "I'm still young. I'm not in a hurry. But I'm in a hurry." Gu Xingyin looked at the man in front of her in shock. Tsin Yuye looked at the young woman opposite him and said seriously, "If Miss Xie has plans for a marriage alliance, you can consider me." Chapter 2003. Gu Xingyin felt her mind go blank for a moment. She carefully sized up Tsin Yuye and confirmed that this was indeed the real Tsin Yuye. So the question was, why would the crown prince of the Tsin family be in such a hurry to marry someone else? Perhaps Gu Xingyin's expression was too obvious, but Tsin Yuye thought back to what he had just said and confirmed that there was indeed some ambiguity in his words. He didn't understand why such a thought suddenly popped into his mind when he saw Xie Han in the cafe. Under Gu Xingyin's puzzled gaze, Tsin Yuye coughed dryly and began to explain. "Miss Xie, you might have misunderstood what I meant. My family has been rushing me recently, so I was thinking of finding a lady of equal social status and reaching an agreement with her." Gu Xingyin listened to Tsin Yuye quietly. The general idea was that the two of them would sign a contract and get married just for show. They didn't have to fulfill their duties as husband and wife. They just had to pretend that they had deep feelings for each other in public. They would maintain such a relationship until the agreement expired. Needless to say, this method was a good choice for heirs of wealthy families like them who didn't want to get married. After Tsin Yuye finished speaking, he looked at the woman in front of him nervously. He didn't know why he was nervous. In fact, it was a rare experience for the crown prince of the Tsin family to be nervous. Now, even if there was a huge project worth hundreds of millions, it wouldn't move him at all. However, facing this strange woman, whom he had officially met for the first time, he felt nervous, which was rare. Gu Xingyin frowned as though she was thinking. After a long while, Tsin Yuye felt that his request was a little too strange and was prepared to be rejected by her. However, Gu Xingyin finally gave him an answer. She nodded. Gu Xingyin looked at the man in front of her and wanted to laugh, but she held it in. I'm very interested in Mr. Tsin's idea, but I hope you can add one more condition to the agreement. Tsin Yuye's mood was inexplicably brilliant at this moment. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "Please speak." Gu Xingyin stretched out her white index finger. Add one more thing. During the contract marriage, although both parties don't have to fulfill their duties as husband and wife, they still have to show enough respect to each other. During this period, you are not allowed to have any extramarital affairs, both physically and mentally. That was her bottom line. Even if it was just an agreement, at least their marriage was real. Just the thought of finding true love in marriage made him feel disgusted. Tsin Yuye nodded without hesitation. No problem. He was even happy that Gu Xingyin could make such a request. This showed that she was seriously considering the feasibility of this matter and wanted to participate in it. Seeing his attitude, Gu Xingyin also smiled. Then I have no problem. When she said this, she looked at the watch in her hand again. At this time, she should be home. The Xie family always ate together as a family. If she didn't go home soon, her parents would be worried. Tsin Yuye saw her actions and handed her a business card. Miss Xie, if you have something to do, you can leave first. I'll talk to you in detail when I have time. Chapter 2004. Gu Xingyin and Tsin Yuye exchanged business cards, apologized, and left in a hurry. She returned home, and as expected, her parents were waiting for her on the sofa. Mother Xie had retired from her senior management position a few years ago because of her poor health, but Father Xie was still in the company. When he saw Gu Xingyin, he felt a little strange. You got off work early today. Why are you back so late? Gu Xingyin put down her bag, changed into a pair of slippers, and sat on the sofa. She took a sip of the juice that Mother Xie handed her. She said, after work, I met two people and talked for a while. Father Xie didn't ask any more questions. He had just asked out of concern. His daughter was already so old, so she should have her own private space. During dinner, Mother Xie started nagging again. She scooped soup for her daughter and said, I asked Auntie Lin to make this. It's very nutritious. Hanin has been working hard recently. She seems to have lost a lot of weight. Gu Xingyin touched her face speechlessly. Perhaps in the eyes of mothers all over the world, their children always had the halo of thin and weak. She didn't say anything and obediently took the bowl of soup and drank it. After washing up at night, Gu Xingyin lay on the bed and took out a book to read when her phone suddenly rang. She opened it and saw a text message. I'm Tsin Yuye. She knew it was Tsin Yuye. When she returned home, Gu Xingyin saved Tsin Yuye's number. After thinking about it, Gu Xingyin replied with a smiling emoji and sent a string of numbers. This is my WeChat account. In fact, this kind of social media app was much more convenient than the original text message. Tsin Yuye was very fast. In less than a minute, Gu Xingyin received a friend request on WeChat. Tsin has requested to add you as a friend. What a straightforward nickname. Gu Xingyin thought of Tsin Yuye's cold and handsome face and felt that he was indeed compatible with this nickname. On the other hand, Tsin Yuye was stunned when he saw Gu Xingyin's nickname. Cute Hanin. Thinking about her short hair and slightly old-fashioned clothes, Tsin Yuye found it hard to associate her with this nickname. He added the other party as a friend and sent a message to test the waters. Tsin, Ms. Xie. The other party's reply, cute Henin, Mr. Xian Gu Xingyin didn't think there was anything wrong with that name. In fact, Xie Han herself was indeed a girl who loved to act coquettishly. It was just that she had already graduated and entered the company. She was young and beautiful, and looked too harmless. If she didn't dress up more mature and cool, it would be difficult to control the situation. She had never used this WeChat account in the company. Instead, she had applied for a new account. This was a private account that he had used since he was young, and he only added a few close friends and family members. Sun Yuye couldn't help but click on the other party's profile picture and check his moments, and he saw Yuye. She was completely different from the Xie he. There was a selfie of Xie Han in his WeChat moments. She was a smiling girl who wore exquisite and fashionable clothes. Like all young girls, she liked to take selfies. She liked to share her feelings, eat good food, and complain about certain things. Her most recent post was from a month ago. It was a picture of a cat with dispirited eyes. There were no words. Chapter 2005. Scrolling back, there were only a few updates in the past half a year. It seemed like half a year ago was a watershed that completely separated the Xie Han of the past and the Xie Han of today. Sun Yuye thought for a moment and suddenly realized that half a year ago was the day Xie Han officially graduated and entered the Xie Corporation. Sun Yuye suddenly felt sorry for this girl when he first came into contact with his own company. As the eldest grandson of the Tsin family, his family had told him since he was young that the Tsin family would be his in the future. Therefore, he had received a different education from his cousins since he was young. Others could play, be carefree, and pursue their dreams. He couldn't. He thought of his cousin. She was already in her 20s and was pampered like a little princess by her family. Every day, she would be troubled by the debut of her favorite brand in Milan and Paris at the same time. Which one should she go to? Because she didn't need to inherit the family business, the biggest possibility was to marry a rich young master whose family background was similar to the Tsin family's. She would move from one villa to another and continue to live a luxurious life. Anyway, even if she didn't do anything, the shares given to her by her family would be enough for her to squander for the rest of her life. Xie Han was completely different from his cousin. The Xie family had only one heir, and she was the only daughter of this generation. It could be said that she didn't have any choice in her future. She had just graduated from school and entered the workplace as the heir. No one knew better than Sun Yuye how much pressure there was. Hence, he now completely understood why Xie Han was so different from the Xie Han of the past. He exited his WeChat Moments page and looked at the message history from a few minutes ago. He moved his fingers and sent a message. Tsin, Ms. Xie, is it convenient for you to chat? Cute Henin, yes, it's convenient. Tsin, regarding my suggestion today, if Ms. Xie doesn't have any objections, when can you marry me? Gu Xingyin, it seemed like the Tsin family was really pushing him. Actually, she was wrong. Although the Tsin family had indeed urged Sun Yuye a few times, no one could force him if he was really unwilling. Initially, Sun Yuye also had the idea of finding someone pleasing to the eye to get married. However, he didn't expect it to be so soon. He only wanted to take it slow. After a year or two, when his family was rushing him, he would find someone to work with. Unexpectedly, after meeting Gu Xingyin in the coffee shop today, the idea of a contract marriage became stronger than ever. He actually didn't know this Miss Xie very well. He had seen her from afar twice at banquets before, but he didn't feel anything. He didn't know why he was so eager to establish a relationship with her this time. Just as Sun Yuye was stunned by his own reaction, more news came from the other side. Adorable Henin, I'll find a time to reveal it to my family. I'll give you a definite reply in a few days. Tsin, okay. Gu Xingyin actually wanted to say that this smiling expression was not something to be embarrassed about, but she felt that someone like Tsunyuya might not understand such a joke. After replying with a smile, she put down her phone and stopped reading. Instead, she closed her eyes and lay down quietly for a while. He didn't expect to meet his lover on his first day in this world. From the looks of it, this time, it seemed like he was going to have sex with her first. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt like laughing. Chapter 2006. The next day, Gu Xingyin went to work as usual. She hadn't thought of how to tell her family. Did she have to tell them that she had fallen in love with Tsunyuya and decided to marry him immediately? She felt inexplicably ashamed of herself. Gu Xingyin sat in her office. She had just finished her work and was quietly staring at a pot of devil's ivy on the table in a daze. Should she tell her parents that she would bring her boyfriend home in a few days to show them? Gu Xingyin thought about it and felt that this was more feasible. Zhang Henin seemed to have been convinced by Gu Xingyin's words and didn't look for her for the past 2 days. After telling Tsunyuya about her plans, Gu Xingyin quickly received his reply. Tsunyuya, how about tomorrow? Gu Xingyin, the Tsun family was indeed very anxious. She gave an affirmative answer. After that, she sat down and began to investigate Zhang Henin. Zhang Henin was a girl with a similar family background as Jie Ming. In other words, the Zhang family was a very ordinary family. Zhang Henin's appearance was considered above average and she could be considered a beauty with makeup. However, her school was only an ordinary undergraduate. Compared to Jie University, it was really not good enough. The job she found could barely support her daily life. In summary, Zhang Henin was completely at a disadvantage when compared to Jie Ming. It was precisely because of this that no matter how calm and arrogant Zhang Henin appeared on the surface, she was extremely inferior in her bones. In her heart, she knew very well that the current Jie Ming was a huge stock with great potential. With her own qualifications, it would be difficult to find a man who was better than Jie Ming. Therefore, she couldn't lose Jie Ming. Because of this thought, when she found out that Jie Ming had an ex-girlfriend in his heart that he couldn't forget, she felt a great sense of crisis in her heart. Especially after she found out what kind of person Jie Ming's ex-girlfriend was, this sense of crisis suddenly rose to the peak. This was because she helplessly discovered that whether it was in terms of family background, appearance, or education, she couldn't be compared to her at all. Even her boyfriend, whom she was holding on to tightly now, was also the one who had been dumped back then. She didn't have the time to be jealous of that woman who was at the top of everything. She could only hope that this woman wouldn't have the idea of going back to the old grass for the sake of Jie Ming's current prospects. Zhang Henin really wasn't sure if Jie Ming would stand on her side at that time. Gu Xingyin skimmed through some of Zhang Henin's experiences. She was a little emotional. At the same time, she couldn't understand one thing. Since Jie Ming was so generous to Zhang Henin now, why didn't Zhang Henin take this opportunity to learn more and improve her own ability and quality? As long as she made herself outstanding enough, would she need to worry about not being able to attract equally outstanding men? However, she was so happy with her current life that she even quit her original job and moved in with Jiming. Zhang Henin spent her days preparing breakfast and dinner for Jie Ming every day. Then, she spent the money that Jie Ming gave her to buy all kinds of things. Such a woman, Gu Xingyin wanted to give her a good beating. Had she ever thought that one day, Jie Ming would give up on her and take a fancy to another woman? She didn't have independent finances and had developed a habit of spending money extravagantly. What would she do? Chapter 2007. After so many worlds, Gu Xingyin could see very clearly that if a woman didn't have the financial ability to be independent and could only rely on a man to survive, that would undoubtedly be quite sad. Because there was no doubt that this meant that she would be betting her future on a man's so-called conscience. It was fine if she met a good person, but what if she met a scumbag? Were there any scumbags in the world today? How many women who looked good on the outside could only force a smile and pretend that they didn't know anything when they knew that their husband had a young and beautiful mistress outside? Because their glory and expenses all depended on that man. If that layer of cover was torn apart, they would lose the only wealthy life they had now. How sad. Gu Xingyin retracted her thoughts. She didn't comment on whether Zhang Henin was sad or not. If she knew what was good for her, she would stay by Jia Ming's side and not disturb her. If she came again, Gu Xingyin was happy to teach her what it meant to be a rich family bullying others. That was why one's horizons were really scary. To Zhang Henin, Jia Ming was the most valuable son-in-law she had ever seen. Therefore, she thought that everyone was like her, coveting Jia Ming. Little did she know that in front of a big shot like the Xia family, a small company like Jia Ming's was really like a game. After work, they went home. After dinner, the family sat on the sofa eating fruits and watching TV. Gu Xingyin suddenly said, "Dad, Mom, I'll bring someone back tomorrow to show you." Father Xia and Mother Xia looked at each other. Mother Xia asked carefully, "Henin, are you bringing a friend over to play?" Gu Xingyin nodded. Mother Xia asked again, "Is it a friend of the same sex or opposite sex?" Seeing how careful her mother was, Gu Xingyin couldn't help but want to laugh. She stopped keeping them in suspense and said with a smile, "It's my boyfriend for now." Boyfriend. Father Xia and Mother Xia looked at each other again and saw nervousness and interest in each other's eyes. Mother Xia quickly asked, "How old is he? What does he do? How's his family background? How long have you known each other?" Father Xia even turned off the volume of the TV and stared at Gu Xingyin with sparkling eyes. At this time, Gu Xingyin kept them in suspense. "When he comes tomorrow, you will know." Mother Xia rolled her eyes at her. "You child, why are you still playing mysterious with us?" Gu Xingyin smiled and hugged one of her arms. She said coquettishly, "I wanted to give you a surprise. You must have heard of his name." Mrs. Xia was a little puzzled. In the end, she followed her daughter's wishes and did not ask further. After Gu Xingyin informed his family, he informed Sinyuya and asked him to go home with him tomorrow. Sinyuya said that he might as well come to the Xia Corporation to pick her up tomorrow, and the two of them would go to the Xia family together. Gu Xingyin agreed. The next day, Gu Xingyin got off work early. She walked out of the company building and saw the low-key black Bentley. Sinyuya got out of the driver's seat when he saw her leave. Gu Xingyin narrowed her eyes and looked at him. It was obvious that the man had dressed up carefully today. A man's dressing wasn't as complicated as a woman's, but it was undeniable, he looked even more handsome. "I'll come back at night." Ahem, I won't tell you that I couldn't sleep until 4 o'clock last night and lay like a corpse the entire day. What a crazy biological clock. Chapter 2008. Have you been waiting for a long time? Gu Xingyin asked. Sinyuya shook his head. I just arrived too. Gu Xingyin didn't comment. Sometimes, there were some things that didn't need to be taken seriously. Sinyuya walked to the other side and opened the car door. He gestured for Gu Xingyin to get in. Gu Xingyin was about to walk over when a female voice suddenly called out to her from behind. Xie Han. She stopped in her tracks and turned around. It was Zhang Henin. She had changed into a suit and trousers today. Her hair was much shorter, and her entire temperament looked a little different. However, in Gu Xingyin's opinion, such an outfit didn't suit Zhang Henin. She was the kind of girl with a petite figure and gentle facial features. She was suitable for a white dress and long hair. Men would think of the campus goddess when they looked at her. Gu Xingyin shook her head and ignored her inner feelings. What did this have to do with her? Maybe she just wanted to change her style. But, Why was she looking for her again? Gu Xingyin frowned and didn't stand still. She watched Zhang Hanin walk over. Zhang Hanin saw Cin Yuye standing on the other side of the car at a glance. There was no other reason. This man was too eye-catching. Even a woman like Zhang Hanin, who had someone in her heart, couldn't help but be dazed when she saw such an outstanding man. Then she looked at the other party's posture as if he was opening the car door for Xie Han. Zhang Hanin was delighted. A young single man and woman. She subconsciously thought of their relationship in the direction of ambiguity. If that was the case, Zhang Hanin looked at Cin Yuye again. Even if she was unwilling, she had to admit that this man crushed her boyfriend in terms of appearance and aura. Looking at the car he drove, although Zhang Hanin didn't have a deep understanding of luxury cars, she still knew about Bentley. A standard tall, rich, and handsome man. Cin Yuye glanced at the two of them. To be precise, he glanced at the expression on Gu Xingyin's face. Then he saw the impatience and disgust on Gu Xingyin's face. Obviously, she did not welcome the arrival of this lady. Thinking of this, Cin Yuye dispelled the idea of avoiding it. Miss Zhang, what a coincidence. Gu Xingyin pursed his lips and greeted her in a neutral tone. Zhang Hanin was a little embarrassed to see her like this. She glanced at Cin Yuye again. This man had no intention of leaving. She could only bite her lip and say to Gu Xingyin, "Miss Xie, can I talk to you?" Gu Xingyin raised her hand and looked at the time. "Sorry, I'm in a hurry." It was obvious that he didn't want to talk to her. Zhang Hanin choked and continued, "It's about Jie Ming." She stared intently at Gu Xingyin, wanting to see her reaction. Gu Xingyin laughed sarcastically. "Miss Zhang, what kind of illusion do you have that makes you think that a man who has broken up with me for so long still has the charm to order me around in his name?" Cin Yuye's heart skipped a beat. He got a lot of information from that sentence. What he cared about the most was that the person called Jie Ming seemed to be Xie Han's ex-boyfriend. Zhang Hanin's face paled. She hadn't expected Gu Xingyin to be so rude. Gu Xingyin continued, "I'll say it again. I'm not interested in Miss Zhang and your boyfriend at all, and I don't want to develop any relationship with Miss Zhang beyond that of strangers. Miss Zhang, please stop and don't disturb me again." Chapter 2009. She glanced at Cin Yuye. Her meaning was obvious. However, she had just taken 2 steps when she realized that someone had grabbed her arm. Gu Xingyin's face darkened. "Let go." She didn't like strangers having physical contact with her. Before, when she faced Zhang Hanin, she had never shown such a harsh side of her. Suddenly, Zhang Hanin was frightened. However, she still didn't let go. Zhang Hanin's eyes turned red. She looked at Gu Xingyin pitifully and said, "Ms. Xie, I know you broke up with Jie Ming, but since you've already broken up, why can't you be clean?" Gu Xingyin was so angry that she almost laughed. What did she mean? Did she say that she and Jie Ming were still together? Gu Xingyin looked up at Cin Yuye. The man stood aside calmly, and she couldn't tell if he was happy or angry. Gu Xingyin looked away and stared at Zhang Hanin. Her gaze was so powerful that it made Zhang Hanin, who had been clenching her teeth and refusing to let go, feel apprehensive. She could not help but let go of her hand and even took a step back. Gu Xingyin said coldly, "Ms. Zhang, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Jie Ming and I haven't contacted each other since we broke up. Ms. Zhang, you'd better not listen to rumors." She said it clearly, but Zhang Hanin didn't believe her. She shook her head and said, "If the two of you really broke up completely, how could he still not forget you after so long?" Gu Xingyin was in disbelief. "So you think it has something to do with me?" Zhang Hanin didn't say anything. Gu Xingyin sneered, "It's better for Ms. Zhang to ask the person directly." However, Zhang Hanin didn't have the guts to ask Jie Ming. She didn't dare to ask Jia Ming because she was afraid that she would get an answer that she couldn't accept. That was why she was going to find Gu Xingyin. Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin was not in the mood to play such a big show with her. She said coldly, "I can guarantee that I am upright, but I can't control other people's thoughts. Miss Zhang, instead of spending so much effort to find me, you might as well think about how to capture your boyfriend's heart. This is more reliable than anything else." Zhang Henin looks at her jealously. "You are just standing in the position of the winner, so you talk to me so high and mighty." Gu Xingyin snorted. "The winner?" She looked Zhang Henin up and down and smiled mysteriously. "Who gave you the confidence to think that you and I are on the same level? What makes you think that a person like Jia Ming would make me, Xie Han, unable to forget him? Miss Zhang, it's best not to overthink things. Furthermore." Gu Xingyin's tone was very cold. "The things you regard as treasures are nothing but dirt and rubble to me. Not everyone will only set their sights on that small piece of land." "Henin is right." A deep male voice came from behind them. Gu Xingyin turned her head and looked at Sun Yuye in surprise. Why did he interrupt? Sun Yuye gave her a comforting look and turned to Zhang Henin. "Miss, the person you are talking to now is my fiancé. We have a very good relationship, and we are even about to start a new family." His tone was very gentle when he said this, but the next moment, it immediately became cold and stern. "As a man, I absolutely cannot tolerate anyone smearing my fiancé's honor. Miss, if you continue to pester and spout nonsense, why don't you have a good talk with the lawyer?" Chapter 2010. A hint of panic appeared on Zhang Henin's face. For someone like her, the existence of a lawyer was undoubtedly very intimidating. Moreover, she glanced at Sun Yuye cautiously. Even if she was facing Xie Han, she still had some thoughts of dealing with her. However, this man didn't look easy to provoke. She didn't dare to confront Sun Yuye directly. Therefore, she could only watch as the man who was looking at her coldly and gently bent down to open the car door for Xie Han. Until the car left, the two of them didn't look at her again. Zhang Henin stood there in a daze. Not far away, a few employees of the Xie group were secretly sizing her up. They saw with their own eyes what the general manager said to this woman. Although they couldn't see clearly from afar, based on the actions of both parties, it didn't seem to be pleasant. Zhang Henin obviously felt these gazes. She felt a little embarrassed, so she quickly turned and left. Seeing her leave, the employees completely lost interest in her. Compared to this unknown woman, the man who was intimate with the general manager and drove a luxury car was the focus of their attention. In the car. Ever since they got into the car, the two of them hadn't spoken. Gu Xingyin sat in the front passenger seat and glanced sideways at the calm man. She wasn't sure if he was angry. Sun Yuye noticed her gaze. Because he was driving, he didn't move much. He only asked, "What's wrong?" Gu Xingyin blinked and said, "Nothing. It's just." "Thank you." Sun Yuye smiled and said, "It's nothing. If that woman pesters you again in the future, don't talk nonsense with her. Just teach her a lesson." He didn't act like a so-called gentleman in front of her. This made Gu Xingyin quite happy. She nodded and said, "Okay." She estimated the distance. It would take about 20 minutes to get home. After thinking about it, she decided to tell Sun Yuye about what had happened recently. After all, according to their plan, they were going to get married. If Zhang Henin came to make trouble in the future, she didn't want him to misunderstand. "The woman who came to look for me today is my ex-boyfriend's current girlfriend." She slowly revealed some things. A hint of surprise flashed across Sun Yuye's eyes. He obviously did not expect that the other party would be willing to be honest with him about this. "That's it," Gu Xingyin said helplessly. In her opinion, Xie Han was really an undeserved disaster. If it wasn't for Zhang Henin's frequent visits to her, she wouldn't have even remembered that person. After a moment of silence, Xinyue said, "So, that woman came to find you for no reason?" Gu Xingyin nodded helplessly. Xinyue thought for a moment and said, "I will do something to help you get rid of her." Him. Gu Xingyin's mind spun and almost instantly thought of a possibility. "You're going to look for Jie Ming." A man like Xinyue definitely wouldn't argue with a woman like Zhang Henin. But now, it seemed that the most direct and effective way was to put an end to this matter from the root. The root was Jie Ming. Gu Xingyin had also thought of looking for Jie Ming directly. However, with her identity, it wasn't suitable. She didn't want to have anything to do with that man anymore. Chapter 2011. If Xinyue stepped in, everything would be much more convenient. Xinyue wasn't surprised that she thought of this. He nodded, indicating that he was right. Gu Xingyin smiled at him gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Xian," Xinyue suddenly laughed. He looked at Gu Xingyin meaningfully and said, "When we go to your house later, are you going to call me that in front of your parents?" Gu Xingyin, she seemed to have forgotten about this. If they were a real couple, they wouldn't address each other in such a distant manner, right? She seemed to be in a difficult position. Xinyue didn't seem to notice half of it. He continued, "It's not just you at home. We have to pay attention to this in public in the future. What do you think, Henin?" The last word, Henin, made Gu Xingyin tremble. She had thought that a serious man like Xinyue would be more resistant to such an intimate address. However, since he didn't care, why was she still conflicted? As Xinyue was looking forward to it, Gu Xingyin smiled and turned to look at him. "Yuye." Xinyue nodded faintly, but he was very happy inside. The car soon arrived at the Xie family's house. This was a high-end villa area, and the security was especially strict. Even though Xinyue was driving a Bentley, he was still stopped by the security guard until Gu Xingyin poked her head out of the car window. "He's my friend. Send me home." She smiled at the security guard. The security guard glanced at the two of them before letting them in. There were only these people coming in and out every day, and the security guard at the door was already familiar with them. The Xie family's parents were already waiting at home anxiously. In fact, the moment their daughter said that she was going to bring her boyfriend home, the two elders of the Xie family had started to imagine all sorts of things. After lunch today, Mother Xie rejected the invitations of her old friends and stayed at home anxiously. Father Xie also returned home early. The sound of the car starting could be heard. Father Xie stood up immediately. However, he quickly sat back down with an indifferent expression on his face. Mrs. Xie was also sitting upright. When Gu Xingyin brought Xinyue into the house, she saw her parents sitting elegantly on the sofa. She held back her laughter. Although Dad and Mom looked very calm, did they not know that it was their overly serious appearance that showed that they were not that calm? Father Xie and Mother Xie immediately looked at the tall man standing behind their daughter. With just a glance, they recognized Xinyue. Father Xie couldn't hide his surprise. "Mr. Tsin." Xinyue's name and face were well known in Yunhai City's business circle. Xinyue smiled. "Hello, Uncle Xie." "Hello, Auntie Xie. You can just call me Yuye." He handed the gift in his hand to the nanny with a very humble smile on his face. Gu Xingyin glanced at her parents and walked over to pull Xinyue to sit down. The relationship between the two was clear at a glance. Father Xie and Mother Xie looked at each other. They didn't expect their daughter's boyfriend to beat Xinyue. Especially Mother Xie. She had been worried that her daughter would be cheated all day. However, when she saw Xinyue, her worry instantly turned into surprise. Chapter 2012. In the eyes of the older generation in Yunhai City, Qin Yuye was a rather reliable and capable junior. He had ideas and boldness. After taking over the Qin Corporation, he made the entire Qin Corporation prosper. The most commendable thing was that his private life was quite strict. The common bad habits of the young masters of wealthy families, such as keeping celebrities and playing with models, had never been spread to him. Especially the families with daughters, they all thought highly of him. When the Xie family was considering the candidate for the marriage alliance, they naturally considered Qin Yuye. In terms of family background, the Qin family and the Xie family could be considered big shots in Yunhai City's business circle. They could be said to be well matched. The elders of the Qin family had also secretly revealed some intentions to the Xie family. However, the Xie family doted on their daughter. Although there were some changes in this, they still said that it was better to let the younger generation manage their relationship on their own. Father Xie had originally planned to find a time to explain it to his daughter. He really thought that Qin Yuye was a good candidate. Who knew that before he could tell his daughter would give him such a big surprise. It was the first official meeting between Qin Yuye and the Xie family's parents, and both parties were quite satisfied. By dinner time, the two of them had already changed the way they addressed Qin Yuye to Yuye, which was slightly intimate. Gu Xingyin even specially glanced at Qin Yuye. She didn't expect this man to be so good at pleasing the elders despite looking a little cold. After dinner, it was already late. Qin Yuye said goodbye. Mother Xie smiled and invited him to come again next time. At the same time, she asked Gu Xingyin to send him off. Gu Xingyin got up and left with Qin Yuye. Once you're here, as a daughter, I won't have any status in the family, Gu Xingyin said faintly. Qin Yuye obviously didn't expect Gu Xingyin to be jealous because of this. He turned around and looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. Hanin, you have to know that Uncle Xie and Auntie Xie are good to me on the premise that I'm your boyfriend. In other words, if it wasn't for Gu Xingyin, he, Qin Yuye, was nothing. Gu Xingyin burst out laughing. I'm just joking. You're so serious when you answer. Qin Yuye only said, I can feel that your parents really love you. Gu Xingyin nodded. I know. After sending Qin Yuye off, Gu Xingyin returned home. As expected, she was interrogated by her father and mother. Gu Xingyin was prepared for this. She and Qin Yuye made up a small story through their mouths. Father Xie and Mother Xie didn't suspect anything. After all, they wouldn't think of something like a contract marriage. After dealing with her parents, Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief. From the next day onwards, Qin Yuye started to fulfill his duties as a boyfriend. Every day, he would drive to Gu Xingyin's office to pick her up from work. Every day, Gu Xingyin would receive a bouquet of fresh flowers with morning dew. In less than 2 days, the entire Xie group knew that the general manager was now in a honeymoon period. And the man who was lucky enough to pursue their super fair, rich, and beautiful general manager was the eldest son of the Qin group. Sure enough, fair, rich, and beautiful men are all tall, rich, and handsome. Fairy tales are all lies. The receptionist, who had just signed for a bouquet of flowers, lamented to her colleague. Her colleague took out her lipstick and touched up her makeup. Hearing this, she agreed. That's true. In this day and age, who still believes that sparrows can turn into phoenixes? Chapter 2013. Gu Xingyin watched as the assistant skillfully entered the office with a pot of flowers. She removed the bouquet from the previous day, replaced it with fresh water, and inserted it into the vase. Speaking of which, Xie Han used to be busy with the company's affairs. She didn't have the leisure to raise flowers in the office. The only pot of devil's ivy was brought over from home by the assistant who couldn't stand it anymore. She rubbed her eyes and looked at the rare bright colors in the office. She admitted in her heart that seeing such a bunch of fresh words made her mood a little better. At this moment, her phone rang. Gu Xingyin took it out and glanced at it. It was an unfamiliar number. She felt a little strange. This was Xie Han's private phone number. Except for a few close relatives and family members, almost no one else knew it. She didn't answer. After the phone rang a few times, the screen dimmed again. But in just a few seconds, the phone rang again. It was the same number. Gu Xingyin clicked on the answer button. Hello. There was a moment of silence on the other side. A man's voice cautiously sounded. Is this Henin? The next second, Gu Xingyin hung up the phone. Jia Ming. She didn't need to think to know why he was looking for her at this time. The most likely thing was that Sun Yuye's arrangement had already worked. It even allowed Jia Ming to discover the reason for this targeting. Gu Xingyin didn't doubt that the man deliberately let Jia Ming find out all of this. After all, with his means, if he really wanted to destroy Jia Ming's company without anyone knowing, he would definitely not be able to rest in peace until he died. The phone rang again. Gu Xingyin directly blocked the number this time. She didn't want to have anything to do with this man at all. If it was the real Xie Han, she might have picked up the phone for the sake of the past. But now, it was Gu Xingyin who knew the original plot. She could clearly see that Xie Han had been in Jia Ming's mind for so many years on the surface. But what he couldn't forget was probably not his ex-girlfriend at all, but the feeling of being dumped. After all, in the original plot, Gu Xingyin never saw Jia Ming say that he couldn't forget Xie Han, but he never showed any other expression. Even when Zhang Henin accidentally killed Xie Han, he didn't seem to have any extra emotions. He didn't love Xie Han or Zhang Henin. He only loved himself. Because of financial disagreements, his ex-girlfriend dumped him, so Jia Ming was unexpectedly generous to his current girlfriend. In Gu Xingyin's opinion, this man was simply unreasonable. Not long after she hung up the phone, Sun Yuye called. I've caused some trouble for Jia Ming. Be careful for the next few days. I'm afraid he'll come looking for you. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, you're too late. He's already called. However, she was too lazy to talk about such a troublesome matter. She only said that she would take note of it. Gu Xingyin guessed that Jia Ming wouldn't let it go, but she didn't expect him to be so impatient. After work, Gu Xingyin just hung up the phone with Sun Yuye. There was a traffic jam on the road and it would probably take more than 10 minutes for him to arrive. Gu Xingyin had her own car, but Sun Yuye insisted on picking her up from work every day and sending her home. This was actually beyond the content of the contract between the two of them, but both parties tacitly didn't mention it. Then, Gu Xingyin saw a familiar figure. Chapter 2014. Gu Xingyin turned around and walked into the company, but that figure seemed to have seen through her intentions and ran after her. Henin, Henin. That person called her from behind. The security guard at the entrance of the company heard the commotion and looked over curiously. Gu Xingyin took a deep breath, stopped in his tracks, and turned around. She looked back at Jia Ming calmly and said, Jia Ming, there's nothing between us. Please call me Miss Xie. Such a completely unfamiliar attitude, Jia Ming smiled bitterly and said, okay, Miss Xie. He was much smarter than Zhang Henin. He definitely wouldn't waste time on such a meaningless address. Anyway, there was no relationship between the two of them. So what if he called her intimately? Gu Xingyin looked at Jia Ming. It was undeniable that Jia Ming's handsome appearance played a role in being liked by Xie Han, who had always had high standards. When he was in school, he was youthful and handsome. Now, Jia Ming, who had been in society for several years, had the demeanor of a mature man. He was still a very charming man. However, the moment Gu Xingyin saw him, she couldn't help but think of Sun Yuye. Then, there was no harm in comparison. Sure enough, her lover was the most handsome. While she was in a daze, Jie Ming was delighted. He thought that it was his charm that had worked. "Miss Xie," Gu Xingyin looked up at him and interrupted him, "You're here for me?" Jie Ming nodded quickly. Gu Xingyin frowned and said, "Our Xie Corporation doesn't have any business with you. Why are you looking for me?" Looking at her impatient appearance, Jie Ming's heart sank, and then a wave of anger rose in his heart. It was like this again. It was the same in the past. Her temper was always so bad, and she didn't think about others at all. Ever since Jie Ming opened his own company and became the boss, he rarely met anyone who didn't give him face like this. If he could, he wanted to leave. It was rare. But he couldn't leave. He thought about the frowns on his partner's faces and the things he had found out. A gentle smile appeared on Jie Ming's face. "Recently, my company has encountered a little trouble." Gu Xingyin interrupted him, "I have no interest in your company." Act. Jie Ming did not believe that Xie Han was completely unaware of this matter. He said patiently, "I found out that someone was trying to trip us up in the company, and that person was your fiancé." He looked at Gu Xingyin eagerly, and his unspoken intention was quite obvious. Gu Xingyin responded lazily, "Oh. What does it have to do with me?" Jie Ming was infuriated. He said angrily, "I know we're running a small business and you big shots don't care about it. But this is still someone else's hard work. Don't you feel guilty for ruining it so easily? Conscience?" Gu Xingyin snorted. She was about to say something when she suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder. A familiar aura surrounded her. Her entire body was encircled by someone, and she took a step back. Then, she was protected behind someone. Cin Yuye was here. Jie Ming looked at the man immediately. He knew Cin Yuye. This was her former idol and the man who had caused her so much trouble. Chapter 2015. Mr. Xian, he took the lead to greet Cin Yuye. His voice was a little dry. He really wanted to put on a smile, but he had just been mercilessly mocked by Xie Han, and Cin Yuye was the person who had tampered with his company. Coupled with the current situation, he really couldn't greet his opponent with a smile under such circumstances. Cin Yuye didn't say anything. He looked at Jie Ming. "Mr. Jie, why are you blocking my fiancé?" Although he had already found out about the relationship between the two, Jie Ming still felt a little aggrieved when he heard Cin Yuye's words. The reason he stopped Xie Han was because of Cin Yuye. Since the main character was here, of course, he couldn't let go of such an opportunity. "Mr. Cin, my Yinxin technology is just a small business, and it doesn't have any conflict with the companies under the Cin Corporation. Why can't Mr. Cin be lenient?" Cin Yuye nodded straightforwardly. "You mean Yinxin technology? Indeed, the companies that you want to cooperate with are related to the Cin Corporation. I was the one who asked them to refuse to cooperate with you." He actually admitted it without any hesitation. Jie Ming didn't expect him to be so straightforward. His heart sank. At this time, he would rather the other party feign civility with him. Because that would at least show that the other party wasn't willing to really fall out with him, and there was still room for reconciliation. But now, hearing Cin Yuye's tone, it was obvious that he wasn't willing to be kind to him. He suppressed his anger and tried to calm his tone as much as possible. "Mr. Cin, why do you have to do this? I don't think I've ever offended you. Why do you have to be so aggressive?" He looked at Gu Xingyin, who was protected behind Cin Yuye, and a look of understanding flashed in his eyes. "Is it because of Miss Xie? I did have a relationship with her in the past, but that was a long time ago. Mr. Cin, you're a magnanimous person. You can't let go of such a small matter, right?" He couldn't help but be a little sarcastic in the end. Cin Yuye snorted. He sized Jie Ming up and down, and the last sense of crisis in his heart disappeared. If Xie Han took a fancy to such a man who couldn't even understand the main point, then there was something wrong with her taste. Speaking of which, he was quite compatible with his girlfriend. Hearing Sun Yue's laughter, Jie Ming felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Sun Yue said, "Mr. Jie, you overestimate yourself. Where do you get the confidence that Hanin will still be obsessed with you after having a fiancé like me?" His words were too venomous. Jie Ming's face instantly turned green, but he had no way to refute. Because what he said was the truth. No matter how he looked at it, Sun Yue was stronger than him. Sun Yue ended the exchange with his last sentence. "Mr. Xie, you might as well go back and think about why I did this. To be clear, Hanin and I don't like strangers harassing us all the time. If there's nothing else, I hope that Mr. Jie and your girlfriend will not appear in front of the two of us. Otherwise, when people are annoyed, they can't help but want to cause trouble for others," he said meaningfully. After saying this, he half-carried Gu Xingyin into the car, leaving Jie Ming alone in deep thought. Chapter 2016. After getting into the car, Gu Xingyin finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sun Yue was curious. "You're that happy?" "Gu Xingyin, of course. Look at how you scared him." "Ha ha ha ha. I've wanted to do this for a long time." Sun Yue. Okay, his future wife's style seemed a little different from others. However, he liked it. The two of them went back to the Xie family's house in a harmonious atmosphere. As for Jie Ming, after a long time of hesitation, he finally understood what Sun Yue meant. Jie Ming, who finally found the truth, had his first argument with Zhang Henin. For the first time, it was also the most intense quarrel. "Henin, you actually went to find Xie Han privately. Why didn't you discuss it with me?" Jie Ming was a little annoyed. This girlfriend of his had a good personality, knew how to manage the house, and relied on him. She had always been able to satisfy Jie Ming's masculine mentality. The only flaw was that she didn't have enough knowledge. This was what Jie Ming disliked the most about Zhang Henin. This woman could be a lover, but she couldn't be a wife. Jie Ming thought it through very clearly. When his company was on the right track, his future would be bright. At that time, he would definitely have a reputation as a young talent. In addition to his good looks, it wouldn't be difficult to find a rich young lady who was richer than him. With such a woman as his wife, he wouldn't lose face outside. As for Zhang Henin, Jie Ming knew that he wouldn't mistreat this woman who had been following him. As long as she was willing to follow him, he was willing to take good care of her. He never thought that Zhang Henin would cause such a big mess for him. What kind of family was the Xie family? What kind of family was the Cin family? They were the stabilizing force of Yunhai City's businesses. They only needed to move 2 fingers, no, they didn't even need to do it themselves. With just a look, there would naturally be a lot of people who wanted to rely on these 2 families to help them get rid of the eyesores. Jie Ming was naturally very happy to do this kind of thing. However, now he was the one who was being swept away. And the reason was that this woman in front of him was recklessly provoking Xie Han again and again. "You really don't have a brain," he cursed. It was unknown which sentence had touched Zhang Henin's nerve, but this woman, who was usually docile and gentle to Jie Ming, had completely exploded. She shrieked, "I'm not going to discuss with you. I don't have a brain. Jie Ming, touch your conscience and think about it. If I were to tell you, which side would you stand on?" Jie Ming frowned and looked at her. He didn't understand what she meant. Zhang Henin continued, "Don't think that I don't know. Although you and Xie Han have broken up, you still can't forget her. I'm your girlfriend. Is it wrong for me to go see your ex-girlfriend and tell her to stay away from you?" Jie Ming's face darkened. No wonder Xie Han had such an expression when she saw him. Of course there is. He glared at the woman in front of him. "What do you want, Zhang Henin? How long has it been since I broke up with Xie Han?" Don't you know if I'm in contact with her? Do you know who she is? Who was her fiancé? Let me tell you, we can't afford to offend him, you know. Zhang Henin, can you have some self-awareness? Chapter 2017. Self-awareness. Zhang Henin smiled with a strange expression. She didn't expect that Jia Ming would have such an evaluation of her in his heart. That was great. Since he didn't give her any chance, she might as well tear him apart. Who didn't know each other's background? Who is the one who doesn't have self-awareness? Jia Ming, how long has it been since you broke up with her? She is the daughter of a rich family, and she has a handsome and rich fiancé. What about you, Jia Ming? You are just a pitiful person who was dumped, but you still can't forget her. You are the one who has been living in delusion. Slap. There was a moment of silence. Until Zhang Henin reacted and covered her face. She screamed, Jia Ming, you actually hit me. You actually hit me. She seemed to have been provoked by something, and she reached out to scratch Jia Ming's face. Jia Ming didn't pay attention for a moment and felt a stinging pain on his face. Zhang Henin's sharp nails fell on his face, and he was afraid that he was bleeding. You shrew. He pushed her away with so much strength that Zhang Henin was pushed to the ground. Jia Ming was very irritated at this time, and he was very disgusted when he saw Zhang Henin on the ground. I tell you, Zhang Henin, we are finished. Pack up your things and get out of here. If you are still here when I come back tomorrow, don't blame me for being ruthless. He said coldly and slammed the door. The room was quiet again. Zhang Henin didn't realize what Jia Ming said until a long time after he left. He wanted to break up with her. And drive her out. After the initial confusion, what surged in Zhang Henin's heart was infinite panic and helplessness. Jia Ming didn't want her anymore. What should she do? She had no money and no job. Except for the branded clothes and jewelry, she had nothing at all. She had basically spent all the living expenses that Jia Ming had given her. She didn't have any real estate under her name, and the apartment she lived in was under Jia Ming's name. This also meant that if Jia Ming really abandoned her, she wouldn't even have a place to live. If that was the case, she would have to live a tight life like before, working 9 to 5 every day and not earning enough money for a bag in a month. She couldn't do this. She didn't want to live that kind of life again. She scrambled to her feet and took out her phone to call Jia Ming. She loved him so much. She had to admit her mistake properly. Jia Ming would definitely forgive her. The call went through. Zhang Henin didn't have time to think of what to say before the busy tone came from the phone. Clearly, the other party had died. She did not give up and dialed the number again. This time, it was not a busy tone, but a robotic female voice. He immediately blacklisted her. Zhang Henin sat on the cold floor in a daze, her eyes filled with despair. The next day, Gu Xingyin received a message from the system. Zhang Henin broke up with Jia Ming and was chased out. Gu Xingyin sighed in her heart. I really didn't misjudge him. Jia Ming is a man who doesn't have any feelings. The one he loves the most is himself. Because Zhang Henin had interfered with his career, he had mercilessly abandoned her. If Zhang Henin was really just a weak daughter flower, it would be fine. However, she was obviously a beautiful snake who hid her true colors very well. Gu Xingyin was in a good mood as she put a washed grape into her mouth. It was not bad to watch them bite each other. Chapter 2018. Jia Ming arrived very quickly. Moreover, he probably knew that Sun Yuye would come to pick up Gu Xingyin from work every day, so he specially chose this time to wait for her. Mr. Tsun, I've already broken up with Zhang Henin. I'm really sorry. I really didn't know that she had caused so much trouble for you and Miss Xia, Jia Ming's posture was very humble, as if he really felt very guilty about what Zhang Henin had done. Seeing that the two of them didn't react, he added, "I can guarantee that she won't cause trouble for the two of you again." Sun Yuya glanced at him and moved his lips slightly. "You can go back. Those companies from before probably won't work with you anymore. You can find someone else in the future. It has nothing to do with me." This meant that he had relented. Jia Ming was overjoyed. He thanked him repeatedly and left. The smile on his face disappeared completely after he returned to his car. Sun family. Xia family. One day, I, Jia Ming, will let you taste the humiliation today. A cold expression flashed across his face. In Sun Yuya's car. Are you really going to let Jia Ming off? Gu Xingyin asked. She saw that Jia Ming wasn't someone easy to deal with. Such people often held grudges. It would be fine if he didn't develop in the future, but if he did, she was afraid that it would bring disaster to the two families. Sun Yuya's lips curled up. Of course not. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Sun Yuya looked at her with a smile. If I couldn't tell, Jia Ming already hates the two of us. How could I let such a person have the chance to rise up? Watching someone who harbored enmity against him rise up was the behavior of a fool. Since he had promised Jia Ming, he would do it discreetly. People like them had plenty of ways to suppress a small company that was far from being established without anyone noticing. Gu Xingyin listened to him speak his thoughts to her without hiding anything. The feeling in her heart wasn't that he was such a scheming person on the outside, but, this kind of personality was really to her liking. The car soon arrived at the entrance of the Xia family's villa. Speaking of which, when Sun Yuya's car entered this villa area, he would no longer be stopped. Because all the security guards here knew that the man driving the Bentley was Miss Xia's fiancé. The car stopped, but Sun Yuya didn't move. Usually, at this time, he would get out of the car and watch Gu Xingyin walk in with his own eyes. It seemed like something had happened. Gu Xingyin looked at him questioningly. Sun Yuya took a deep breath and turned to Gu Xingyin, "Henin, it's about time we set a date for our wedding." Gu Xingyin blushed. Originally, the two of them had agreed to a contract marriage. They had intended to get married. It should be said that it was a flash marriage. However, the way the two of them interacted with each other recently was completely like a couple in love. Even Gu Xingyin herself had forgotten that she and Sun Yuya were not a proper couple. Since Sun Yuya asked this, he probably had an idea in mind, right? Hence, Gu Xingyin asked, "When do you want to get married?" Unexpectedly, Sun Yuya only lowered his head and said, "Me? Of course, the sooner the better." He couldn't wait to become a real couple with her. As for whether it was an agreement or not, who cares? He would make her his first. Chapter 2019. As for whether he would really fulfill the agreement when the time came, Crown Prince Tsin expressed that he didn't believe that he couldn't conquer a woman's heart within the 3-year agreement. Thus, Gu Xingyin didn't sense Sun Yuya's sinister intentions at all. Of course, even if she did, she would actively cooperate. She nodded naturally. Set a date and communicate with uncle and auntie. I'll talk to my parents. Although she said this, Gu Xingyin knew in her heart that this matter most likely wouldn't be objected. During this period of time, she had also been to the Tsin family twice. Sun Yuya's parents were very satisfied with her family background and character. Mother Tsin couldn't wait for the two of them to get married as soon as possible. On the Xia family's side, Father Xia and Mother Xia were also very satisfied with Sun Yuya. Although it was a little abrupt to get married so soon, they wouldn't be too against it. Who wouldn't like to have a grandson? Sure enough, the marriage of the two of them almost received the full approval of the two families. Half a month later, a piece of good news quickly occupied the headlines of all the major media outlets in Yunhai City. The marriage of the Tsin and Xia families. The most luxurious business marriage in Yunhai City in the past 20 years. The wedding date of the two of them was also exposed at the same time. It was in the middle of the next month. Time was tight. But in modern society, as long as there was money, there was nothing that couldn't be solved. The wedding venue was set in an old castle in the west. The scale of this wedding was simply unprecedented for the union of the Tsin and Xie families. Compared to the extravagance of this wedding, the few celebrity weddings that the media had previously promoted as nouveau riche weddings, it was simply shabby. It wasn't that other people's weddings weren't good, but these two's wedding was simply burning money. Did a contractual marriage have to be so careful? The two of them tacitly didn't mention this matter. To Gu Xingyin and Sun Yuye, this was a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. It was only a 3-year marriage. What would happen when the agreement expired after 3 years? Sorry, what did you say? Why didn't I understand? This wedding of the century between the top families was talked about by countless people for a long time. Many people sighed and said that this newlywed couple must be very loving. If they didn't really have feelings for each other, who would be willing to spend so much money on a wedding? However, no one knew that the newlyweds had not fulfilled their duties as husband and wife even after half a month of marriage. After the two of them got married, they moved out of their respective homes and moved into a new home, a villa that Sun Yuye had prepared long before they got married. It wasn't too far from their homes. If they missed home, they could go home to visit at any time. The current situation between the two of them was probably similar to how both of them liked each other, but it was still far from the point of breaking the window paper. It was mainly because of the agreement. The two of them couldn't directly break the conditions they had set. At home, Gu Xingyin slept in the master bedroom while Sun Yuye slept in the side bedroom. The two of them would go to work together. On their days off, they would go out to eat delicious food, go shopping, travel, and visit their elders. It could be said that the two of them had done everything that a normal loving couple could do. Except for the last step. The relationship between the two of them gradually warmed up, but neither of them was willing to break through that layer of window paper. It should be said that Sun Yuye was reluctant. Gu Xingyin has the mood of watching a good show, who asked him not to use so many methods but to dig a hole for himself and approach her with the contract marriage. She wasn't going to fill the hole that she had dug herself. It was finally done. This was the 10th update on the 4th. The 5th update continued. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a monthly vote, begging for a monthly vote. Good night, everyone. Chapter 2020. CEO Tsin, CEO Xie, congratulations on your marriage. In the well-dressed hall, Gu Xingyin was wearing a gown and holding Sun Yuye's hand. The two of them were constantly greeted by people. It was the 80th birthday of a retired old man in Yunhai City. Although the old man had retired from the circle, he was a famous figure in Yunhai City when he was young. To these influential people now, he was enough to be called a senior. It was reasonable for them to come and congratulate such a person on his 80th birthday. Sun Yuye and Gu Xingyin, who had just announced their marriage not long ago, naturally attracted a lot of attention. The two of them maintained a smile on their faces and stood together the whole time. In the eyes of others, they were naturally a bunch of loving newlyweds. Gu Xingyin gestured to the people who came to greet her. She raised the wine glass in her hand and took a sip. Oh, she was a little dizzy. She didn't show it on her face, but her entire body swayed slightly. Others couldn't tell, but Sun Yuye, who was standing beside her, felt it very clearly. You can't drink? Sun Yuye was a little shocked and angry. Why didn't she say so? As he spoke, Sun Yuye reached out and half-hugged Gu Xingyin's waist. He brought her to the sofa near the balcony. There was a huge floor-to-ceiling window here, and there were several pots of green plants. Sun Yuye let Gu Xingyin sit properly and opened the floor-to-ceiling window a little. The cool night breeze seeped in. Gu Xingyin's somewhat muddled mind didn't sober up at all. Instead, it became even more blurry. This feeling was quite strange. To a certain extent, she was actually very clear-headed. She could feel the people around her and see all kinds of figures not far away. But she couldn't react effectively. It was as if she had temporarily lost control of this body. She was drunk. Sun Yuye turned his head to look at the person beside him. She sat on the sofa with an elegant posture and a calm expression, as if she was thinking about something. But if one looked closely, one would find that the corners of her eyes were faintly red. And her usually clear gaze had long lost its focus. Sun Yuye was both angry and amused. He saw clearly from the side that Gu Xingyin did not even finish a glass of wine. Was this the rumored 1 cup of wine? However, this appearance was indeed quite coaxing. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and confirmed that she was fine for the time being. He got up and said to her, "Hanin, sit here obediently. I'll get you a glass of water." Gu Xingyin's muddled consciousness pondered for a long time before she finally understood the meaning of this sentence. She nodded seriously, looking extremely obedient. Seeing her like this, Sun Yuye felt as if his heart had been scratched by Xiao Yu's feather. His entire being was somewhat restless. He strode away and asked the messenger for a glass of water. When he came back, as expected, Gu Xingyin was still sitting in the same place. She looked so serious that the bystanders thought that something had happened to her. Surprisingly, they were tactful enough not to disturb her. It could be said that it was a wonderful coincidence. Sun Yuye glanced at her and confirmed that Gu Xingyin didn't have the ability to get up and drink water by herself at this time. Without saying anything, he took the water and sat down beside Gu Xingyin. "Come, Hanin, open your mouth." He put the cup to her mouth and called her softly. Perhaps surrounded by a familiar aura, Gu Xingyin was quite obedient at this time. Chapter 2021. If he asked her to open her mouth, she would. If he asked her to drink, she would drink. After watching her finish half a glass of water, Sun Yuye put down the glass and sat beside Gu Xingyin, looking at her intently. Oh, her usually sly and intelligent big eyes were misty. She looked so cute. He really wanted to bully her. The corners of her eyes were a little red, as if she had blushed. Sun Yuye suddenly felt a little thirsty. He picked up the glass that Gu Xingyin had drunk half a glass of water and drank the remaining water in one gulp. At that moment, he actually had the urge to go up and lick her red eyes. Crown Prince Tsin never knew that he would have such a perverted side to him. No. He retorted seriously in his heart. How could he be called a pervert if he wanted to kiss his wife? From afar, although no one came up to talk, there were quite a few people who had fixed their gazes on this unusual couple. However, these uncles and aunties of the older generation and the young single aristocrats were all stunned by their actions. The crown prince of the Tsin family, who had always been cold, distant, and polite, actually fed his wife water. They couldn't see what exactly they were talking about, but everyone could clearly see that after Sun Yuye fed his wife water, he drank the remaining half a glass of water. So what if you're married? Are you very happy to be able to show off your love openly? Many young people secretly gritted their teeth. Originally, they were all staunch single people and felt that marriage was like a grave. However, when she saw such a clear stream among the rich couples, her heart suddenly surged with an impulse to get married. What was going on? Sun Yuye and Gu Xingyin didn't realize that they had unknowingly attracted a lot of hatred. Gu Xingyin was drunk. Sun Yuye naturally didn't feel at ease letting her sit here alone, so he kept watch over her. Those who knew what was good for them saw that the young couple was alone and didn't disturb them. But there were also a few who didn't have good eyesight. When they saw the head of the Tsin family and the eldest daughter of the Xie family sitting here without anyone around, they couldn't help but have the idea of befriending them. However, They were destined to be rejected today. Sun Yuye was worried about Gu Xingyin and didn't have much intention of befriending these people. The few people who came forward were all pushed back by him with neither light nor heavy force. In the end, everyone knew that the eldest son of the Tsin family shouldn't be disturbed today. Finally, the banquet ended. Sun Yuye had already asked his chauffeur to wait outside. He still had his arm around Gu Xingyin's waist and supported her as they walked out. How lovey-dovey. Many people behind them sighed as they looked at the two figures snuggling up to each other. Soon, they reached home. Sun Yuye, Gu Xingyin, and an auntie usually lived in this villa. At this time, the auntie had already gone to bed. But knowing that the main family was having a banquet tonight, there must be some hangover soup in the kitchen. Sun Yuye helped her into the master bedroom and placed her on the bed. Then, he squatted down and removed Gu Xingyin's shoes. He placed the blanket over her chest to prevent her from catching a cold. Sun Yuye turned around and was about to go to the kitchen to take a look. She was caught off guard and her hand was grabbed. And she held it very tightly. Sun Yuye couldn't help but laugh. "You're so drunk." The usual Henin would never do such a thing. He wanted to pull her hand down and coax her gently, "Good Henin, I'll get you some hangover soup." Chapter 2022. Unfortunately, at this time, Gu Xingyin didn't listen to him at all. At this time, she seemed to be lying in a pool of warm spring water. Her body and mind were lazy. This feeling wasn't very comfortable, but it wasn't uncomfortable either. But under such circumstances, she became extra dependent on this partner in her soul. She didn't want him to leave. Sun Yuye was still patiently waiting for her to let go when he heard Gu Xingyin murmur softly beside the bed, "Don't go. Don't leave me." Sun Yuye's heart jumped twice because of this sentence. He took a deep breath and felt that he was really trapped in an inextricable situation. The other party just said a few words casually after drinking, but he took it seriously. He said, "Henin, don't make trouble. I'll get you some hangover soup. Otherwise, you'll feel uncomfortable when you get up tomorrow." No. Gu Xingyin didn't fully open her eyes, but she subconsciously acted coquettishly. She just didn't want him to leave. "You, stay with me. I like it, like it." Sun Yuye's heart was pounding. He tried to get closer, wanting to hear the rest of the words clearly. However, the little rascal on the bed stopped halfway through his sentence. It made his heart itch. Sun Yuye was a little depressed. He looked at the person close to him, but he couldn't get angry. His hand was still held in the other party's hand. A thought suddenly flashed through Sun Yuye's mind as he recalled what Gu Xingyin had said earlier. This thought made his heart extremely excited. Was it possible? Was it possible, she also liked him? Once this thought was born, it couldn't be suppressed. Sun Yuye looked at the person on the bed tentatively, his eyes fixed on the other party's delicate eyebrows. After a long time, he finally called her softly, "Henin." Gu Xingyin's mind was muddled, but she could still hear someone calling her. She opened her eyes with some effort. Her hazy eyes were covered with a trace of fog, very much like the dense mountain forest that had just been washed by the rain in autumn, quiet and pure. Sun Yuye was almost attracted to those eyes, but he finally remembered that he had more important things to do. He stared at her without blinking and suddenly asked, "Henin, do you know who I am?" Of course he knew. Gu Xingyin blinked and grinned. Her misty eyes curved into cute crescents. Sun Yuye. Sun Yuye was delighted and hurriedly struck while the iron was hot. "Do you like Sun Yuye?" This question seemed to be much more profound than the previous one. Gu Xingyin's muddled mind spun for a while before she managed to accept the message. After thinking about it for a long time, he finally came up with an answer. "I like it." She answered with certainty. As if to prove her words, she even nodded her head seriously. Hearing this, Tsunyuya was both surprised and worried. He was pleasantly surprised that the person he liked and wanted to protect for the rest of his life had just admitted that she liked him. What he was worried about was that this was just the unconscious murmurs of the drunkard. Even so, he couldn't help but smile on his face. Gu Xingyin stared at him blankly. He was really good-looking, she thought in a daze. Alcohol was a very magical thing. Under its catalysis, it could often make many people do a lot of unexpected things. For example, Gu Xingyin at this moment. Chapter 2023. He bent down and looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. Hanin, we're husband and wife. So, no matter how much I treat you, you don't need to thank me. I just hate that I can't treat you better. Gu Xingyin's eyelashes fluttered. However, Tsunyuya naturally straightened his body and considerately drew the outer layer of curtains before walking out of the room by himself. I've already made lunch. Get up and wash up. The door was gently closed. Gu Xingyin looked at the curtain that couldn't completely block the light and suddenly chuckled softly. 10 minutes later. Tsunyuya, who was sitting in the dining room, saw Gu Xingyin walking out. She had changed into a set of home clothes. Without the delicate and sharp makeup, she looked more like a little girl. Gu Xingyin sat down. In front of her was a bowl of steaming seafood porridge and 5 or 6 plates of various side dishes. Tsunyuya had good cooking skills. Gu Xingyin had known this for a long time. At first, she was surprised when she found out. Then Tsunyuya explained with a smile. My mother always thought that a wife is meant to be loved, so when I was young, she made me learn to cook extra. Gu Xingyin scooped up a spoonful and drank slowly until the bowl was empty. She wiped her mouth. Are you full? Tsunyuya frowned and seemed to be a little dissatisfied. She was so thin and ate so little. Gu Xingyin repeatedly confirmed that she was really full. She quietly watched Tsunyuya finish the food in his bowl and said, "We." Tsunyuya looked up at her. Gu Xingyin was speechless for a moment. Facing Tsunyuya's gaze, she finally said, "The agreement between us?" Tsunyuya narrowed his eyes. He looked at Gu Xingyin and went straight to the point. I don't intend to abide by that agreement. Gu Xingyin's eyes widened. Tsunyuya looked at her. I regret it, Hanin. I can't stand the fact that we've only been married for 3 short years. I can't stand the fact that I can only look at you from a distance every day without being able to kiss you or touch you. I also can't stand the fact that after 3 years, we'll go our separate ways and have nothing to do with each other anymore. I want your whole life, Xie. He looked into her eyes and said deeply. Gu Xingyin looked hesitant. She opened her mouth and said, Tsunyuya immediately said, last night, you said you liked me. Gu Xingyin, Tsunyuya continued, and you held me back and refused to let me go. Gu Xingyin, Tsunyuya felt wronged. My people are already yours. You can't not take responsibility. Gu Xingyin. Okay. Tsunyuya was still saying. Don't reject me first. His eyes widened as he stared at Gu Xingyin. If he didn't hear wrong, her answer was okay. Tsunyuya was instantly surprised. Hanin. Gu Xingyin smiled. I like you too. I like you a lot. The person opposite her stood up all of a sudden. Because his movements were so big, he even moved the chair. However, he didn't care about this. Instead, he walked over to Gu Xingyin's side and pulled her into his arms. I'm so happy, he said with a smile. Gu Xingyin let the man hug her and shared the joy of both parties. After a while, Tsunyuya let go of her and said to her, wait for me for a while. Gu Xingyin watched as he walked into her room. In less than a minute, he took out something. Chapter 2024. Gu Xingyin saw it clearly. It was a few pieces of white paper. She had a rough idea of what it was. Sure enough, Sun Yuye unfolded the pieces of paper and placed them in front of her. It was the agreement they had signed back then. Sun Yuye glanced at her and tore the pieces of paper into pieces in front of Gu Xingyin. Then, he looked at Gu Xingyin expectantly. Gu Xingyin compromised. In the third drawer on the left of the dressing table in my bedroom, Sun Yuye moved quickly. As if he was afraid that she would go back on her word if he was slow, he handed the pieces of paper to Gu Xingyin. Then, Gu Xingyin similarly shredded it into pieces and piled them together with another pile of shards on the table. The shackles that had been binding Sun Yuye's heart were completely released. From now on, there was no more agreement between him and Henin. There was no exchange of benefits or favors. She was his wife, and he was her husband. There was no more unnecessary relationship. After dinner, Gu Xingyin was forced to rest by Sun Yuye. He cleaned the dining room and kitchen himself. Sun Yuye once again felt that he had the foresight to give the auntie a leave. At this time, it was most suitable for the two of them to have some alone time. When he returned to the bedroom, Gu Xingyin had fallen asleep again. Sun Yuye looked at the slight fatigue on her face and felt a little guilty. But more than that, he was full of happiness. He thought for a moment and climbed into bed. The bed beside her sank. Gu Xingyin subconsciously leaned toward the source of the familiar scent. Feeling her unreserved dependence, Sun Yuye couldn't stop smiling. He lowered his head and gently kissed Gu Xingyin's forehead. "Have a good dream, my Henin." After the two sides explained everything, Gu Xingyin and Sun Yuye's relationship became better and better. No matter where they went, they were almost always together. Therefore, those who knew about this couple all expressed that they had been completely showcased. In their small home, there was no longer a master bedroom and a secondary bedroom. Sun Yuye had officially moved his things to the master bedroom that was supposed to be shared by the couple on the first night they established their relationship. Gu Xingyin naturally could not refuse such an act. Now, she was fully in control of the company's affairs. Her marriage was also sweet and blissful, and her life was very sweet. Of course, she had never stopped paying attention to Zhang Henin. Ever since she was chased out of the house by Jie Ming, Zhang Henin's life had been very difficult. Her educational background and ability were only average, but during those 2 years of being raised by Jie Ming, she had developed a character of being extravagant and arrogant. She was not interested in the jobs that she was interested in, and the jobs that she could do, according to him, were tiring and paid so little. Who would want them? Thus, she repeated the days of looking for a job, being despised, and looking for a job again. There was no source of income, and there was no limit to spending money. In less than a month, Zhang Henin began to feel financial tension. She had to find Jie Ming. The only person she could find was him. But why would Jie Ming care about her? The two of them quarreled every time they saw each other. In the end, Jie Ming was too lazy to see her again. After a few times, the two of them were like fire and water. Chapter 2025. Now, Zhang Henin had long forgotten about Gu Xingyin. Not to mention that the other party had already married and had nothing to do with her and Jie Ming, she had no extra energy to find trouble with Gu Xingyin. Right now, Zhang Henin's mind was filled with thoughts of how to get more money from Jie Ming. But who was Jie Ming? When he was willing to spoil Zhang Henin, he was naturally willing to spend money on her. But now, Zhang Henin obviously had no value for him to spend money on her. "I've made it very clear to you, Zhang Henin. We broke up and have nothing to do with each other. Don't come to me again." Jie Ming was a little irritated at the moment. Recently, the company was not doing well. Several big clients who had worked well with him had withdrawn their investments. Either they had cash flow problems or they had found better targets. He was under pressure every day. Now, he finally had time to relax. But he was blocked by Zhang Henin, this woman who was haunting him. Zhang Henin's face was a little pale. She looked at Jie Ming and sneered, "Jie Ming, I've been with you for 2 years. Every day, I washed and cooked for you like a nanny, and I even slept with you. Are you really going to send me away like a beggar? When you liked someone, you would feel good about whatever she did. When you didn't like someone, you would dislike whatever she did." At this time, Jie Ming was looking at Zhang Henin because of the latter. He only felt that this woman was disgusted. "To be honest, Zhang Henin, you've been with me for 2 years. Have I treated you badly at all? Buying clothes, bags, and cosmetics, more than 100,000 yuan of pocket money is enough for me to hire dozens of nannies." Nanny? Zhang Henin seemed to have heard a joke. She loved this man. In the few years they were together, she took care of this man with the most attentive attitude. In exchange, she was just evaluated as a high-level nanny who could sleep with him. The two parted on bad terms again. Jie Ming frowned and drank there. Suddenly, a gentle voice sounded, "Handsome, are you alone?" He raised his head with hazy eyes and fell into a pool of hot spring. Jie Ming found a new love. A very beautiful and fashionable woman. Zhang Henin also found a job as a waitress in a large shopping mall. Of course, it was not those first-tier luxury brands. With her education and beauty, it was not enough for them to take a fancy to her. More than once, she saw Jie Ming accompanying that tall and innocent woman into one luxury store after another. Those places were once one of her favorite places. He wasn't even willing to give her a breakup fee, but he was willing to spend so much money on a strange woman. Zhang Henin's heart was bleeding from hatred. After several sleepless nights, Zhang Henin finally couldn't hold back the devil in her heart. She resigned, dressed herself up, and went to look for Jie Ming. Jie Ming was originally very impatient, but Zhang Henin lowered her attitude. "Jie Ming, I know that I was too emotional a while ago. I've thought it through during this period of time. It's better for us to part on good terms." She looked at Jie Ming. "I'm preparing to leave this city. In this place, the only person I've ever loved and the closest to is you. Before I leave, would you like to have a meal with me?" Jie Ming frowned. To be honest, he didn't want to have anything to do with this woman at all. However, Zhang Henin's eyes were red. It was rare for her to show weakness. In the end, he couldn't be ruthless. He agreed. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.